There is a secret, known only to those who have stood in the ruins of their own certainties. It's a truth that lives not in the light of day, but in the quiet, smoky hours of the night, when the walls between what we are and what we long to be grow thin. It's the story of a man who, 8 centuries ago, held a match to the tinder of his own soul. He did not do it out of despair, but as a kind of fierce, final invitation. He called out into the darkness, not with a question, but with an offering, his own burning, and the darkness answered. It answered not with a voice, but with a presence, not with words, but with wine. This is not a history. It is a map, drawn in ash, to a place where the seeking itself is the finding, where the wound is the doorway, and the only thing you have to lose is everything you were never meant to carry. Chapter 1. The longing that burns brighter than fire. There is a particular kind of ache that a man learns to carry, not the sharp, sudden pain of a broken bone, or the grieving weight of a loss, but a deeper, more persistent hum, a dissonance, as if the note your life is playing is just slightly out of tune with the music of the world. You feel it in the quiet of the commute home, the landscape blurring past the window. You feel it in the stillness after the family has gone to bed, the house settling into its bones, and you are left with the echo of your own heartbeat. We are taught to fix things, to diagnose the problem, find the tool, apply the solution. But this hum has no manual. It's a homesickness for a home you've never seen, a thirst for a water that doesn't seem to exist in any of the wells we are taught to dig. The man we know as Rumi knew this ache. His name was Jalāl, a respected scholar, a man of God in the way that society understood it. He had knowledge. He had status. He had the respect of his community. He had built a life of impeccable order, a fortress of theology and law. And inside that fortress, the hum was deafening. All his knowledge was a map of a territory he had never set foot upon. All his prayers were letters addressed to a distant king, with no guarantee of a reply. He was a man dying of thirst in a room full of beautifully labeled bottles of sand. And then came the wild catalyst, the one who would become his mirror, his provocateur, his beloved. Shams of Tabriz, a wandering dervish, caked in the dust of the road, his eyes holding a fire that could consume a man's carefully constructed world in a single glance. He did not bring Rumi new information. He did not quote scripture. He asked a single, devastating question that bypassed the intellect and went straight for the soul's root. He saw the fortress, and he did not ask to be let in. He asked why it had been built in the first place. In that meeting, the hum became a roar. The orderly scholar was unmade. The thirst became an emergency. This is the first, quiet truth. That longing you feel, that sense of being an exile in your own skin, it is not a flaw in your construction. It is not a sign of failure. It is the most authentic part of you, knocking from the inside. It is the soul's GPS, and its signal is strongest when you are lost. We spend our lives trying to silence that hum, with achievement, with noise, with possessions, with love. We try to furnish the fortress more comfortably. But Rumi's story whispers a different path. What if, instead of silencing the ache, you listened to it? What if you followed it? What if that homesickness is the one true thing you possess, the only compass that points to a real north? So let that question settle in the room with you now, in the dim light. That faint, persistent hum. Don't try to answer it. Don't try to name it. Just let it be. Acknowledge its presence, as you would an old friend who has come to sit with you in the silence. This is not a problem to be solved. It is the beginning of a conversation that lasts a lifetime, and the first, bravest thing you can do is simply to stop pretending you don't hear it. And as we sit with that longing, that quiet, insistent hum in the blood, a natural question begins to form in the shadows. If this ache is a guide, and not a curse, where could it possibly be leading? The path, it seems, does not lead upward toward some distant, shining peak, but downward, into the very places we have spent a lifetime trying to fortify. Chapter 2. What if your wound is the doorway? We build our identities like citadels on a hill, stone upon stone, year upon year. This stone is our career, this one our reputation. This one is the story we tell about our childhood, this one the armor of our accomplishments. We stand guard at the gate, deciding what gets in and what stays out. And we are most vigilant against one thing, the wound, the failure that still smolders with shame, the heartbreak that left a hairline fracture in your trust, the dream that didn't just die, but turned to dust in your hands. We wall these things off. We bury them in the deepest dungeons of our personal fortress and post a guard, hoping they will be forgotten. Rumi, the scholar, had his own fortress. And then Shams came, and with the ruthless precision of a true friend, he did not praise the walls. He pointed directly at the cracks. He did not engage Rumi in scholarly debate. He dragged him into the messy, unpredictable, and ecstatic world of music and poetry and dance. He provoked him, confused him, shattered his routines. The respectable teacher began to whirl in the streets with a madman. The guardians of his old life, his students, even his own family, were scandalized. They saw only chaos and the ruin of a great man. They could not see that the cracks Shams was opening were not wounds of destruction, but portals of liberation. The most profound rupture came when Shams disappeared. Whether he was murdered or simply left, the effect was the same. The beloved was gone. For Rumi, this was not just a loss. It was an amputation. It was the ultimate wound, the one that all the smaller ones had been preparing him for. And here, at the absolute bottom of grief, something impossible happened. The wound did not consume him. It became him. In the searing absence of his friend, he found a presence that was vaster, more intimate, more terrifyingly alive than anything he had ever known. The doorway of his grief opened into an infinite ocean. The wound was not the end of the path. It was the path itself. Think of your own citadel. Think of that one room you never go into. The one that holds the memory that still has the power to make you flinch. Even now, in the quiet dark, we see these places as weaknesses, as structural flaws in the architecture of the self. But what if they are the opposite? What if your capacity to be wounded is your greatest strength, not in a masochistic way, but in a profoundly human one? A wall cannot feel. A stone cannot love. It is only the cracked thing that is vulnerable, and it is only the vulnerable thing that is open. The wound is where the world gets in. It is where the light enters you, as Rumi would later say. So tonight, in this safe and quiet space, you can just wonder. You don't have to tear down any walls. You don't have to go into that room. Just acknowledge its existence. Imagine placing a hand on the locked door. Feel the cool, solid wood. The wound is not your enemy. It is a forgotten, sacred chamber in the house of your soul. And perhaps, just perhaps, the key you've been searching for your whole life is not for some distant gate, but has been waiting all this time in the palm of your other hand. And from that quiet acknowledgement, from the simple, brave act of resting a hand on the locked door, a final mystery unfolds. It asks not about the path or the doorway, but about the traveler. If the self we have so carefully built is more fortress than freedom, who is it that remains when the walls finally, softly, come down? Chapter 3. Where does the dancer go when the music stops? There is a moment in any whirl, any ecstatic dance, any peak of feeling, when the motion ceases. The music fades. The breath returns to its normal rhythm. The world, for a moment, seems to hold its breath. In that silence, what is left? For years, Rumi had been the dancer. His poetry poured out of him in torrents, a river of divine madness and human love, all mixed together. The whirling dervishes who followed him spun into trance, seeking to lose themselves in the remembrance of God. The dance was the method, the fiery prayer, the burning, but the goal was the silence after. We spend our lives identifying with the dance. I am my career. I am my relationships. I am my successes. I am my failures. I am this body, this name, this story. These are the steps we learn, the rhythms we repeat. They are the music we mistake for ourselves. We are so terrified of the silence, of the space between the notes, because we fear that in that emptiness we will find nothing, that the dancer, without his dance, ceases to exist. Rumi's entire journey was an unraveling of this illusion. The burning of the scholar was the first dance. The grief for shams was a more frantic, desperate one. The pouring out of thousands of verses was another. Each dance was a burning away of a layer of identification. I am not a scholar. I am not a grieving friend. I am not even a poet. Each layer burned away revealed not nothingness, but a deeper, more essential presence. It was like peeling an onion, not to find a core, but to discover that the essence of the onion is the air and the light that exists between all the layers. When the music stops, the dancer doesn't disappear. He simply remembers what he was before the music started. He discovers the vast, silent floor upon which all dances are performed. This is what Rumi called the friend, the beloved, the you in I am you, and you are me. It is not an external God to be found, but the very ground of your own being, the awareness that was there before your first memory and will be there after your last thought. The self you think you are is just a particular song being played, but the musician, the listener, the silence itself, that is who you truly are. So feel your body here, now, in the bed, the weight of it, the slow, steady rhythm of your breath. This is not the dancer. This is the dance, in this moment. A slow, quiet, beautiful dance of rest. The thoughts that drift through your mind like clouds, they are not the sky. They are just weather in the vast, open space of your awareness. You are not the cloud. You are the sky. You are not the dancer. You are the silence that holds the dance. You have always been here. Through all the years, through all the noise and the striving and the heartache, this silent, spacious, welcoming presence has been here. It is the one thing you could never lose, because it is what you are. And in this knowing, which is not a thought but a feeling, a settling, a sinking, there is no more seeking. There is only being. The story ends not with a period, but with a soft, open exhale, returning to the silence from which it came. Chapter 4. What if your emptiness is the beginning of the story? There is a certain quality of silence that only arrives long after midnight. It's different from the quiet of the evening. The evening's quiet is a blanket, soft and waiting. But this late silence is something else. It's a presence, a listening. It's the sound the world makes when it thinks no one is left awake to hear it. And in this kind of silence, the things we've spent all day running from have a tendency to catch up. A thought we avoided, a hollow feeling in the chest we tried to fill with noise or light or work. That ache of emptiness. We spend our lives treating emptiness as the enemy, as a void to be filled, a problem to be solved. We see it as a sign of something missing, something broken. We paper over it with accomplishments. We stuff it with relationships. We drown it out with the hum of ambition. We are so afraid of the hollow places within us. We fear that if we listen to them, they will tell us a terrible truth, that we are, at our core, lacking. But tonight, let's consider a different possibility. Let's follow the story of a man who did not run from his emptiness, but who walked directly into its heart. A man who believed that this very ache was not an end, but a beginning. His name was Jalāl Rumi, and before he was a poet, he was a scholar, a theologian, a pillar of his community in the city of Konya. He was a man full of knowledge, respected, certain. His life was a structured, beautiful cup, filled to the brim with learning and lore. And then, it shattered. A wandering mystic named Shams of Tabriz came into his life, a wild, untamable son of a man who looked at Rumi's full cup of knowledge and, with a single question, poured it all out onto the dust. The stories say he asked him, who was the greater spiritual teacher, Muḥammad or Bestami? It was a theological trap, and Rumi, the scholar, began to answer with all his learned reasoning. But before he could finish, Shams interrupted. The answer, he said, was that Muhammad said, I cannot count your praise, because he was always expanding, always empty and waiting for God to fill him, while Bestami said, Glory be to me, because he was filled with his own spiritual ecstasy. And in that moment, Rumi's certainty evaporated. His cup was empty. All his knowledge seemed like dust. He was plunged into a profound and terrifying emptiness. The ground of his being fell away. Can you imagine that feeling? To have built your entire self upon a foundation of knowing, of being right, of having the answers, and then, in a single conversation, to have it all rendered useless? It's the silence after the symphony, the hollow in the chest after a great love has departed. It is the most profound disorientation. Most of us would scramble. We would try to gather the pieces, to refill the cup with something, anything, to stop the dizzying fall. We'd find a new certainty, a new distraction, a new belief to cling to. But Rumi did something extraordinary. He did not scramble. He did not cling. He let himself fall. He allowed the emptiness to consume him. He turned and faced the hollow place inside, and instead of seeing it as a ruin, he began to see it as a sacred space, a chamber waiting for a guest. He wrote later, "Why are you so afraid of emptiness? Think of it as a flute. The emptiness inside it is what makes the music possible. Let that idea settle in the quiet of this room. The emptiness is what makes the music possible. All day, we are the solid, filled-up block of wood. We are dense with our thoughts, our schedules, our worries, our identities. There is no space for air to move through us, no song. But when life, or love, or loss, carves out a hollow in us, that is not a breaking. That is the creation of an instrument. The emptiness is the precondition for the melody. Your loneliness, your ache, your feeling that something is missing. What if that is not a flaw, but the very thing that makes you capable of producing a beautiful sound? Rumi's emptiness after meeting Shams was not a passive state. It was a fierce, active hunger. It was a burning thirst. And he came to understand that this thirst itself was a form of prayer more honest than any recitation from a full stomach. A man who is satiated does not understand the value of water. A man who is full of himself cannot comprehend the divine. It is the empty man, the thirsty man, who is in a state of constant, yearning conversation with the source. He called out into his own emptiness, and he found that the echo was not his own voice, but the voice of the friend. He discovered that the hollow in his chest was not a pit, but a nesting place. The wound, he would say, is the place where the light enters you. So when you feel that hollow place inside you, in these quiet, late hours, what if you were to change your relationship with it? Just for a moment. What if, instead of seeing it as a failure or a lack, you saw it as a sacred architectural feature of your soul? A cathedral vault that requires that vast space to inspire awe. The emptiness is not a sign that God is absent. It is the precise, God-shaped space within you. It is the proof that you are designed to hold something vaster than your everyday worries. Your longing for meaning, your thirst for connection, your ache for something more. These are not mistakes. They are the compass needles, trembling, pointing you toward true north. They are the beginning of your story, not the end of it. Because a story requires a quest. A quest requires a longing, and a longing requires an empty space where the treasure is meant to go. So let the breath you take now be a gentle acknowledgement of that space. Not to fix it, not to fill it, just to acknowledge its existence. The quiet in this room, the quiet in your chest, they are the same thing. A receptive silence, a listening, and in the deepest listening, the whisper that arrives is the story you were always meant to hear. But this emptiness, this sacred space, it asks a question of its own. It asks, who is it for? Who is the guest worthy of such a preparation? This longing, what is it actually for? Chapter 5. The guest who arrives only when you are truly alone. There is a strange alchemy that happens in deep solitude. It's a feeling that perhaps you have brushed up against in a quiet moment, when the house is finally still, and the demands of the world have, for just a while, fallen silent. It's more than just being by yourself. It's a certain quality of being with yourself, where the noise of your own identity, the titles, the roles, the endless internal commentary, begins to soften, like a radio dial turning slowly between stations. This is the solitude that Rumi speaks of. Not loneliness, which is an aching absence, but a fertile, pregnant silence, a clearing in the forest of the self. And he insists that there is a guest who will not, cannot, step into a crowded room. We spend our lives building a crowded room within us. We fill it with conversations, with ambitions, with memories that sting and hopes that shimmer. We are never truly alone because we are constantly in company with ourselves, our worrying self, our planning self, our remembering self. It's a bustling marketplace in there, and Rumi asks us gently to imagine clearing it out, to sit at last in the empty marketplace and to wait. He writes, "There is a secret medicine given only to those who hurt so hard they can't hope. The hopers would feel slighted if they knew. This secret medicine, it doesn't arrive with a fanfare. It doesn't come to the you that is striving, the you that is presenting a face to the world. It comes to the you that is left when all that is stripped away. The you that is too tired to pretend anymore. The you that sits in the ruins of your own expectations, with nothing left to offer but your bare, unadorned presence. This is what he means by being truly alone. It is the aloneness of the seed in the dark soil. It has let go of being a seed. It has no concept of what it might become. It only knows the dark and the damp and the profound surrender. And in that state, the first green tip of something new begins to push upward, not because the seed demanded it, but because it finally stopped resisting the transformation. The guest, for Rumi, has 1,000 names, the beloved, the friend, God. But perhaps those words are too grand, too loaded with old meanings. Think of it instead as a profound and intimate sense of connection that can only be felt when you are not trying to connect to anything outside yourself. It is the peace that arrives not when you solve your problems, but when you tire of the struggle. It is the clarity that emerges not from finding an answer, but from releasing the need to ask the question in a certain, desperate way. Shams, the wild mystic, was the human face of this guest for Rumi. Their friendship was so intense, so all-consuming, that it burned away everything Rumi had been before. The townspeople, even Rumi's own family, grew jealous. They could not understand this bond that demanded such absolute fidelity. And one day, Shams disappeared, vanished without a trace. Can you imagine the second, deeper emptiness that followed? The first emptiness was of his scholarship. This one was of his soul. Rumi was plunged into a grief so vast it became a new kind of ocean. He searched for Shams everywhere, traveling to distant cities, calling his name into the wind, until finally, exhausted, heartbroken, utterly alone, he stopped. He gave up the search, and in that moment of absolute, devastating surrender, he realized something. He was looking for the sun outside, when the sun had risen inside his own chest. The guest had not left. The form of the guest had simply dissolved, so that the essence could remain. He wrote, "I looked for you in temples, mosques, and churches, but finally I found you here in my own heart. The guest does not come from a distant place. The guest is what is already here, listening from within the silence you create. It is the intelligence in your cells, the consciousness behind your eyes, the love that persists beneath your fear. It is the part of you that was never wounded, never anxious, never born, and will never die. But you cannot hear its whisper in the marketplace. You can only hear it when you have stopped bargaining, stopped striving, and have simply sat down in the center of your own being and listened. So tonight, if you feel a solitude upon you, do not rush to turn on a screen or pick up a book to fill it. See it not as a void to be escaped, but as a threshold to be crossed. This silence, this aloneness, it is not your enemy. It is the most gracious invitation you will ever receive. It is the house being cleared, the candles being lit, the best chair being drawn up by the fire. All that is asked is that you stop being the busy host for a little while, and allow yourself to become the one who is waited for. And yet, this meeting, this arrival, carries with it a final, beautiful, and terrifying question. If the guest is here, what becomes of the house? What becomes of you? Chapter 6. Why does the cup shatter just before it is filled? There is an old story, a whisper from the mystics, about a cup. It sits on a table, dry and empty for years. Then, one day, a divine presence approaches, a pitcher of infinite, wine-dark water in hand. The promise of fulfillment is moments away. The cup can almost feel the cool liquid, can almost taste its own purpose about to be realized. And then, just as the pitcher begins to tilt, the cup shatters. It breaks into a dozen pieces on the stone floor. To our everyday minds, this is a tragedy, the ultimate failure. The goal was in sight, and then ruin. We know this feeling, don't we? The promotion that vanishes in a corporate restructure. The relationship that ends just as it felt it was becoming real. The peace of mind that settles upon us, only to be shattered by a single phone call. We see these moments as the universe's cruel jokes. The punchline is always our own brokenness. But Rumi and the Sufis tell this story not as a tragedy, but as the final, necessary step. The cup was not broken instead of being filled. It was broken in order to be filled. You see, the cup has an identity. It has a form. It has walls that define where it ends and the world begins. It knows itself as a separate, distinct thing. I am the cup. I hold the water. And as long as it maintains that form, that separate self, it can only ever hold a limited amount. It can be full, yes, but it is still just a cup, containing a small portion of the ocean. The ocean itself remains outside, other. Yourself, your ego, your personality, the story you tell yourself about who you are, is that cup. It is a useful, beautiful, necessary container for navigating the world. But it is defined by its boundaries, its limits, its name, its history, its wounds, its triumphs. It is the vessel, and it spends its life seeking to be filled, with love, with success, with security, with meaning. But what if the meaning you seek is vaster than the vessel? What if the love is so immense it cannot be contained by something called you? This is the crisis Rumi points to. The divine, the infinite, the source of all love. It does not wish to be your possession. It wishes to be your essence. It cannot pour itself into a small, separate container, because that would imply there is a place where it is not. And the infinite has no outside. So, the cup must shatter. The you that you think you are, the you that is trying to find peace, the you that is seeking God, the you that is reading these words, must, in a final, graceful, and terrifying act of surrender, fall away. This is not a destruction of who you are, but a fulfillment of it. It is the drop realizing it is the ocean. But to realize that, the drop must lose its dropness. It must give up its defining boundary. This is what Rumi means when he speaks of fana, of annihilation. It sounds frightening, but think of it not as a death, but as a homecoming. It is the moment the wave realizes it is not separate from the ocean. The waveform collapses, and what remains is the boundless sea. The wave did not die. It simply understood its true nature beyond its temporary shape. Your moments of shattering, your heartbreaks, your failures, your losses, the times when you have felt completely undone. What if they were not interruptions of your path, but the path itself? What if they were the necessary cracking of the shell, so that what is inside, what is eternal and limitless, could finally meet the world without a barrier? The cup shatters, and its pieces are scattered. But now, the water from the pitcher pours out, and there is no longer any difference between the water and the shards of clay. The water soaks into the earth. The clay returns to the river bank. The separation is over. The cup is not holding the water. It has become one with the water. It is everywhere the water is. This is the final secret. The peace you are looking for is not something you can acquire. The love you crave is not something you can receive, because you are that. You are what you seek. But to know that, truly know it in your bones, the seeker must dissolve. The one who is running after God must finally stop, turn around, and see what has been following him all along. So when you feel yourself breaking, when the world feels like it is too much for the container of yourself to hold, remember the cup. The breaking is not a sign that you have failed. It is a sign that you are being prepared for a union so complete, so intimate, that the words you and the divine will no longer apply. There will only be the silent, boundless, overflowing isness. And in that silence, every question, including this one, gently comes to rest. Chapter 7. What listens to you in the ruins of your certainty? There's a quiet that comes not from an empty room, but from a room that has been emptied. It's the silence after the argument you can't take back. The stillness in the office after everyone has gone home, and the project you staked your name on has been shelved. It's the hollow in the chest the morning after a belief you held tightly, for years, simply crumbles in your hands like old plaster. We spend so much of our lives building these structures, don't we? A career, a reputation, a set of principles about how the world works, what it means to be a good man, a successful man. We lay the bricks with such care, more to them with our effort and our pride. We stand inside them, and for a time they keep the wind out. And then life. Life has a way of sending a tremor. Sometimes it's a great, crashing quake. More often, it's a slow, subsiding sink, a crack that appears one day in the foundation, and no matter how you try to patch it, the damp gets in. The structure becomes unsound, and eventually, you have to walk out of it, into the open air. You stand there, in the ruins of your own certainty, and the wind feels different. It's colder. It has a voice. This is where our poet, Jalāl ad-Din Rumi, began, not with answers, but with a spectacular, soul-shattering collapse. He was not always a mystic. He was a scholar, a theologian, a man of immense standing and certainty. He knew the law. He knew the scriptures. He could argue and debate and teach from within the formidable fortress of his own intellect. He was, by all accounts, a pillar, until the day a wild, enigmatic, and utterly disruptive figure named Shams of Tabriz walked into his life. Shams was a walking earthquake. He didn't care for Rumi's books, his titles, his learned commentaries. He asked one impossible question after another. He looked at the magnificent structure of Rumi's mind and saw a prison. And the story goes, he threw Rumi's most precious books into a well. Can you imagine the silence that must have followed that act? The sheer, breathless horror for a man like Rumi? All those words, that deep, accumulated knowledge, sinking into the dark, cold water. The structure of his mind, suddenly, gone. The certainty of who he was, washed away. He stood there, at the edge of that well, looking down into a reflection he no longer recognized. All his life, he had been speaking to God through the filter of text and tradition. And now, in that ruin, he had to ask, is God even listening? And a more terrifying question still. What now is there to listen? This is the moment. Not the ecstatic dance, not the beautiful poetry. The moment of utter devastation, because it is only when the noise of our own knowing stops that we can hear the subtler frequencies, the ones we've been drowning out for years, the hum of the world itself, the whisper of a different kind of intelligence, one that doesn't reside in the head, but in the very cells of the body, in the rhythm of the breath, in the hollow space the collapsed belief has left behind. Think of a time your own certainty failed you. It doesn't have to be grand. Perhaps it was the simple, quiet realization that a path you'd chosen was wrong for you, that a person you thought you knew was a stranger, that a strength you relied on had its limits. In that moment, what did you hear? Not with your ears, but with your soul. Was it just panic? The frantic scrabbling to rebuild, to find a new certainty? Any certainty to fill the void? Or did you, for a fleeting second, hear a different quality of silence? A presence in the absence? Rumi called this presence the guest, the friend, the beloved. It has 1,000 names because it is impossible to pin down with one. It is what listens to you when you have run out of things to say, when your arguments are exhausted, your defenses down, your pride stripped away. It's the patient, unwavering attention that meets your raw, unedited self, the self that exists before the resume, before the roles you play, before the stories you tell yourself to get through the day. In our daily lives, we are so busy broadcasting, talking, explaining, justifying, presenting. We rarely, if ever, switch to receiver. We forget what it feels like to be truly, deeply, unconditionally heard. But in the ruins, there is no one to perform for. The audience has left. The stage is dark, and you are just there. And it is in that there-ness that you might sense it, a listening, as if the silence itself is leaning in, as if the emptiness is not empty at all, but a vessel waiting to be filled with a new kind of sound, the sound of your own essence, echoing back at you from the heart of the world. This is not a God of rules and punishments. This is not the God of the fortress. This is the God of the well, the God of the dark water that received Rumi's books and gave him back poetry, a language not of the head, but of the heart. It's a trade, a brutal, beautiful, necessary trade. You give up your small, cramped certainties, and in return, you get a vast, mysterious, and intimate conversation with the unknown. You stop talking about God, and you start listening to God, who has been listening to you all along. So when you find yourself in those ruins, and you will, because life is a series of gentle and not so gentle demolitions, try not to rush to rebuild. Stay a while. Let the unfamiliar wind blow through you. Let the dust settle. It's uncomfortable. It's terrifying. It feels like failure. But it is the most fertile ground you will ever know, because what is listening to you in that space is not judging your collapse. It is welcoming you home. It has been waiting for the noise to stop, so it can finally say your name. Not the name you built, but the one you were born with. But before we leave this thought behind, before we let the image of the quiet ruin fade, consider the water that remains. The same dark water that swallowed the books. It holds a secret of its own, a mystery about the nature of what we lose and what we are given in return. It asks a quieter, more fluid question about the journey of the heart itself. Chapter 8. Is the tear that falls the same as the one that rises? There is a language spoken here that requires no tongue. It is the slow welling in the eye before a name can be found. The hot sting of a memory that cuts deeper than any insult. The quiet film of moisture that comes not from sadness, but from a beauty so profound it feels like a wound. We know this language. We have all felt the weight of a tear gathering on the lid, the moment of suspension before it yields to gravity and traces a cool, clean path down the skin. We call this grief. We call this joy. We call it overwhelm. We collect these moments like fallen coins, these liquid testaments to our own feeling. We see them as an end, the final, physical proof of a heart that has been touched. But what if that is only half of the story? What if the tear that falls is not the conclusion, but the beginning of a much longer, more mysterious journey? Rumi speaks of a different kind of water. He says, "The ground's generosity takes in our compost and grows beauty. Try to be more like the ground." Compost. What a word! The rotten, the discarded, the decomposed. And our tears, are they not a form of compost? The bitter water of our disappointments, the salt of our regrets, the hot stream of our frustrations. We shed them, we wipe them away, we are ashamed of them. We see them as waste, as evidence of our weakness. But the ground, in its infinite generosity, receives all waste and transforms it. It does not judge. It accepts the fallen leaf, the broken branch, the dead thing, and works its quiet alchemy, turning death into fertility, decay into potential for life. So what is the alchemy of a tear? Where does it go when it leaves you? Imagine that tear now, not as a symbol, but as a physical thing, a tiny, perfect globe of salted water, born from the heat of your emotion. It falls. It soaks into the fabric of your shirt, or vanishes into the earth, or is lost in the rain. It seems to be gone. But follow it, not with your eyes, but with your imagination. That tear, carrying the precise chemical signature of your sorrow or your joy, evaporates. It is drawn up, gently, by the sun's warmth, into the vast, invisible ocean of the air. It rises. It joins with countless other tears, from countless other beings, from the breath of forests and the exhalation of the seas. It becomes part of a cloud. And what does a cloud do? It travels. It carries that collective moisture across deserts and mountains. And when the conditions are right, when the air can no longer hold the weight of all that gathered feeling, it lets go. It returns the water to the earth as rain, as snow, as life-giving dew on the petals of a flower at dawn. The tear that fell from your cheek, in its essence, has become the rain that nourishes a distant field. It has become the water in a spring from which a thirsty traveler drinks. It has cycled through the great, breathing body of the world and returned as a gift. Your grief has been transformed into sustenance. Your joy has become a quenching. The part of you that was lost in that moment of feeling has been given back to the whole, purified by the journey. This is what Rumi means. The fall is not the end. It is the necessary release that allows for the ascent. The heart cannot hold onto its water forever. It must let it go, must allow it to fall, so that it can be taken up and transformed. We are not meant to be sealed vessels, holding our pain and pleasure inside until we stagnate. We are meant to be part of this holy, hydrological cycle of the soul. We weep. The world receives our weeping and gives it back as grace. Is the tear that falls the same as the one that rises? No. It is the same water, but its nature has been changed by the journey. The particular pain, the specific joy, that was yours alone. But in its release, it becomes universal. It becomes part of the rain. Your most personal, private moment is, in truth, a contribution to the cosmos, a prayer offered not in words, but in a single, sacred drop of water. So the next time you feel that familiar heat behind your eyes, that pressure building in the chest, pause. Don't rush to stifle it. Don't judge it as a failure of composure. See it for what it is, the beginning of a sacred process. You are about to contribute to the clouds. You are about to send a part of your heart on a journey back to the source. The tear that falls is heavy with your human story. The tear that rises is light with the promise of return. They are not the same. They are two halves of a single, eternal conversation between your soul and the sky. And as we watch that single tear vanish, not into nothingness, but into everythingness, we might wonder about the one who shed it, the one who stands at the center of this storm of feeling, who gathers the compost of his life and waits for it to become beauty. He feels, at times, utterly alone in this work, and it is in that very loneliness, at the very end of his own strength, that he might just meet the one he has been waiting for. Chapter 9. Who is the stranger you meet at the end of your rope? Every man knows the feeling of the rope running out. It's not always a dramatic, life or death situation. More often, it's a slow, grinding realization. It's the last ounce of patience expended on a problem that will not yield. The final reservoir of willpower, now dry. The last clever solution, tried and found wanting. You've done everything you know how to do. You've used your logic, your strength, your experience, your charm. You've followed the map, and the map has led you to a cliff's edge. And there is nothing left in your hands but the frayed, rough end of your own capacity. We are taught to see this as failure, the point of surrender, the moment of defeat. We cling to that rope, our knuckles white, dangling over the abyss of the unknown, terrified to let go. Because what comes after the rope? What is down there in the dark, where our own light cannot reach? This is the most critical moment in any spiritual journey, the moment your own resources fail you. For Rumi, this was the moment after Shams disappeared. Shams, the wild friend, the son who had melted his frozen certainties, was gone, murdered, some say, by Rumi's own jealous disciples. The source of his new, ecstatic understanding was ripped away. The poetry stopped. The dance stopped. Rumi was left in a silence more profound and more terrible than the first one. He had given up his old life for this son, and now the sun itself had been extinguished. He was at the end of his rope. He had nothing, no old theology to comfort him, no new beloved to inspire him, just a vast, empty ache. He searched for shams everywhere. He traveled to distant lands, asking after him, and then the story takes a turn that logic cannot follow. He went to Damascus, and there, in the narrow, sun-drenched streets, he realized something that changed everything. He wasn't searching for shams out there anymore. He was shams. The beloved he sought so desperately was not lost. He had been internalized. The teacher had dissolved into the student. The friend had become the self. The rupture had been so deep, the love so absolute, that it had burned away the separation between them. Out of that realization, a new poetry was born. He stopped writing poems for shams and began writing as shams. He signed his great collection, the Divan of Shams of Tabriz. The stranger who had shattered his world had not left him in the ruins. He had become the foundation of a new world, built not on knowledge, but on identity. The end of the rope was not the end. It was the beginning of the flight. Who is the stranger you meet at the end of your rope? It is the you that you have not yet met. The you that does not operate on logic and willpower. The you that is not defined by your successes or your failures. The you that exists when all your strategies, your titles, your carefully constructed identities have proven inadequate. We spend our lives building a familiar self, the reliable man, the problem solver, the rock. And this self is good. It is necessary. It is the rope we use to climb the mountain of our lives. But it has a length. It can only take you so far. When you reach its end, you are faced with a choice. Cling to the familiar, known, and limited self, and hang there in perpetual exhaustion, or let go. And when you let go, you do not fall into nothingness. You fall into the arms of the stranger who has been waiting within you all along. This is not the you that you know. This is the you that is connected to the source. The you that is guided by an intelligence deeper than reason. The you that is not afraid of the dark, because it is made of the same stuff as the stars. This stranger is your own soul, unveiled. Your exhaustion, your frustration, your feeling of being utterly spent, these are not signals of your defeat. They are invitations. They are the knocking on the door of the familiar self by the one who lives beyond it. The rope's end is the threshold. The moment you have nothing left to give is the moment you become open enough to receive a different kind of strength, one you did not build, but can only inherit by letting go. So when you find yourself there, fingers gripping that last, frayed inch, take a breath. Look down into the darkness not with terror, but with a curious heart. That is not an abyss. It is the open space where grace can finally find you. The stranger is waiting there to introduce himself, and his name, you will eventually discover, is your own. Chapter 10. What is the name of the song the reed sings after it is torn? Imagine, if you will, the sound of a single note held in the dark, not from a violin or a piano, but from a simple reed flute. It's a sound that carries the memory of wind through a marsh, the whisper of a riverbank, a certain lonely sweetness. This is the ney, the instrument that Rumi so often used to describe the human soul, and its story begins with a violent separation. It was once part of the reed bed, rooted in the wet, dark earth, surrounded by its own kind. It knew the comfort of the crowd, the simple language of rustling leaves against other leaves. It knew the sun and the rain and the turning of the seasons from that one fixed point. There was a peace in that, a certain unthinking wholeness. But then the reed cutter came. His hands, knowing nothing of the reed's private life, selected it, and with a precise, unanswerable cut, he severed it from its home, from its source. This is the first wound, the original solitude. And isn't this a feeling we all carry, gentlemen? This sense of having been cut from something larger, something we can barely remember? We feel it on a Sunday evening, when the silence of the house seems to echo. We feel it in the middle of a crowd, a sudden, inexplicable loneliness that descends like a chill. We call it nostalgia, midlife crisis, ennui. But Rumi would say it is the hollow ache of the reed, remembering the reed bed. It is the fundamental human condition. We are all exiles from a home we cannot name. But here is the secret the reed knows, and the paradox we so often miss. If the cutter had not come, if the separation had never happened, the reed would have lived its whole life in silent communion. It would have been whole, but it would never have found its voice. The very thing that causes its agony, this hollow, empty core, this tube of nothingness, becomes the instrument of its music. The wound is the opening. The emptiness is the chamber where the breath is transformed from a mere sigh into a song that can break a heart. Think of your own life. Not the triumphs, not the victories, but the separations. The job you lost that defined you. The relationship that ended, carving out a new shape of you in its leaving. The diagnosis that arrived, uninvited, and split your life into a before and an after. In that moment, you were the reed, cut from the bed, and the pain was real, a raw, grieving thing. But what happened in the emptiness that followed, when the old identity fell away, and you were left with just you? A hollow tube, waiting. Perhaps, for a time, there was only silence, the wind of circumstance blowing through you, creating nothing but a dull, mournful whistle. But then, maybe, a new note began to form, a resilience you didn't know you had, a deeper compassion for others who were also hurting, a sudden, clear-eyed appreciation for a simple, sunlit morning. This is the beginning of the song. It is a song that could not be composed in the comfort of the reed bed. It is a melody born entirely from the longing for return. The reed song is not a happy song. It's not meant to be. It's a lament. It's full of fire and yearning. Rumi says it plucks the strings of our pain, and it does. It acknowledges the truth of our separation, but in doing so, it does something miraculous. It connects us. Your song of loneliness, when you are brave enough to give it voice, meets my song of solitude, and in that meeting, we recognize each other. We are all flutes cut from the same divine marsh, all playing variations of the same homesick tune. The music becomes a conversation between exiles, a conspiracy of the broken-hearted who have discovered that their hearts are not so much broken as they are opened. So, the next time you feel that old, familiar ache, that sense of being apart, of not quite belonging, instead of rushing to fill it with noise, with distraction, with another project or another drink, pause. Listen to it. What is the specific quality of your emptiness? Is it a low hum of regret, a sharp, keening note for a lost love, a deep, resonant thrum of something you can't even name? Don't judge it. Don't try to fix it. Just listen, as you would to a piece of music in a quiet room. This is your song being tuned. This longing is not a flaw in your design. It is your design. It is the proof that you were made for somewhere else, for something more. It is the compass needle, trembling, always pointing you home. The reed does not sing in spite of its wound. It sings because of it. Its entire beautiful, heartbreaking existence is a single, sustained note of love for the bed from which it was torn. And your life, with all its fractures and its quiet victories, is your love song back to the universe, a song only you can play. But before we leave the echo of this music behind, let's turn our attention from the song itself to the vessel that holds it. For the melody needs a container, and our lives are often defined by the cracks we try so desperately to hide. Chapter 11. Is the crack in the vessel where the light gets in, or where it leaks out? There is an old story, told not in Rumi's words directly, but born from the same world that he breathed in. It speaks of a water carrier in an ancient city. Every day, he would make his journey from the well to the master's house, 2 large pots suspended from a yoke across his shoulders. One of the pots was perfect, solid, and proud, delivering every drop of water it was given. The other pot had a crack, a fine, hairline fracture along its side, and by the time the journey was complete, it would have lost half its contents. 4 years, this was the rhythm of their days. The perfect pot was brimming with satisfaction, while the cracked pot was steeped in a deep and abiding shame. It felt itself a failure, only able to accomplish half of what its counterpart could do. Finally, it could bear the weight of its own inadequacy no longer. It spoke to the water carrier one morning, its voice full of apology. "I am so ashamed of my crack, for it causes you to deliver only half your load, and you receive half the praise." The water carrier listened, and then he smiled. "Did you not notice," he asked gently, "the flowers on your side of the path?" You see, the water carrier, knowing of the pot's flaw, had sown seeds along the left side of the trail, and every day, as they walked back from the well, the cracked pot's steady, weeping trail had watered those very seeds. Because of its perceived failure, a long, beautiful ribbon of blossoms had grown, lilies and poppies and blue delphiniums, which the water carrier would pick to grace his master's table. "Without you being just as you are," he said, "this beauty would not exist. We spend so much of our lives, don't we, trying to be the perfect pot. We seal our cracks with ambition, with success, with a stoic silence we mistake for strength. We believe that our value lies in our wholeness, in our capacity to hold everything together without spilling a drop of our composure, our control. A leak is a failure. A crack is a flaw. We see the water, the time, the energy, the love, the certainty, seeping out, and we mourn it as a loss. We see the light within us, our own inner vitality, draining away into the dry dust of the path. But Rumi invites us to tilt our perspective, to look not at what is lost from the vessel, but at what is growing because of its journey. The crack is not a flaw in the design. It is part of the design. It is the precise, unique opening through which the world receives your particular grace. Your tenderness, which you see as a leak of strength, is what waters the souls of those who walk beside you. Your grief, which feels like a draining away of joy, contains the very nutrients for a deeper, more resilient compassion to grow. Your uncertainty, which seems like a loss of direction, creates the space for a wisdom that is not rigid, but fluid and adaptable. The light does not simply get in through the cracks, as if we are passive containers waiting for illumination. It is a more intimate, more dynamic exchange. The crack is where the inner and the outer world meet. It is where the light you carry within you, your unique spirit, your love, your peculiar genius, leaks out and touches the world. And simultaneously, it is where the outer world, the suffering of others, the beauty of a sunset, the shock of loss, gets in to touch you, to change you. To be sealed is to be a museum piece. Beautiful, perhaps, but sterile, untouched and untouching. To be cracked is to be alive, to be in relationship, to be part of the flow. The goal is not to become the perfect, whole, unblemished pot. The goal is to find the water carrier, the part of your own awareness, your own soul, that knows how to plant seeds along your cracked side. To recognize that the very thing you have been hiding in shame is the source of the unique beauty you have to offer. So tonight, as you lie in the quiet, consider your own cracks, the fragilities you hide, the old wounds that never fully sealed, the vulnerabilities you consider leaks in your resilience. What if you saw them not as weaknesses, but as irrigation channels? What life has grown in the soil of your life because of them? What understanding? What depth? The light is not just coming in, it is flowing out. And the path behind you is not a trail of failure, but a garden you were never meant to see, blooming in the dark. And this gentle acceptance of our brokenness, this leaning into the floor, leads us inevitably to a final, silent question. A question that arises not in the mind, but in the knees, in the bowed head, in the moment we stop trying to fix the vessel and simply set it down. Chapter 12. Who is the one kneeling, and who is the one being worshipped in the act of your surrender? We have a certain image of surrender. It is a white flag on a battlefield. It is the laying down of arms. It is defeat. It is a moment of loss, where one will is subsumed by another, stronger will. We resist it with every fiber of our being, because our identity is built upon our will, our control, our ability to steer the ship of our life through the storm. To surrender feels like a betrayal of that very self. But the surrender Rumi speaks of is of a different nature entirely. It is not a defeat, but a homecoming. It is not the end of the self, but the beginning of its true purpose. Imagine, for a moment, a man kneeling in prayer. The picture is clear. There is the man, and there is God, the subject and the object, the worshipper and the worshipped, two separate entities. This is how we are taught to see it. But Rumi whispers a secret that unravels this entire duality. He says, "I prayed and prayed until I realized that I was the prayer." Let that settle in the silence for a moment. The man kneeling is not just the one offering the prayer. The yearning in his heart is the prayer. The silence he cultivates is the temple. The love he feels is the divine presence. The act of surrender does not connect two separate things. It reveals that they were never truly separate to begin with. The one kneeling and the one being knelt to are two faces of the same reality. Your deepest, most authentic longing for peace. That is peace itself, calling itself back home. Your love for beauty. That is beauty, recognizing itself in the world. So what, then, are we surrendering? We are not surrendering ourself to some external tyrant. We are surrendering the idea of a separate, isolated, fragile self that has to fight and control and manage everything. We are surrendering the exhausting fiction of being the sole captain of a ship on a hostile ocean. We are laying down the arms of our resistance to what is. And in that laying down, a miraculous inversion occurs. The energy we used to spend on maintaining the walls of our separation becomes the very light that fills the room. Think of the things you surrender to, without even thinking. You surrender to sleep each night. You don't make sleep happen. You simply create the conditions, the dark, the quiet, the horizontal posture, and you let go. And in that letting go, a power greater than your waking self comes and restores you. You surrender to a piece of music you love. You don't fight it. You allow it to move through you, to rearrange your emotional landscape. In those moments, who is the listener and what is the music? The boundaries blur. You are the listening and the sound all at once. This is the secret at the end of the rope. When you have tried everything, controlled everything, managed everything, and you finally come to the end of your own capacity, you kneel, and in that kneeling, you might just discover that the strength you are reaching for is the same strength that allowed you to reach. The comfort you are seeking is the same presence that feels the seeking. The love you crave to receive is the very power that enables you to give it. You are not a small soul begging for a glimpse of the divine. You are the divine, experiencing itself as a small soul, for the sheer wonder of the journey back. The surrender is not about becoming nothing. It is about becoming everything. So in your moments of quietest yielding, when you finally stop fighting the current of your own life, listen closely. The whisper of your own heart is the answer to the prayer you thought you were just beginning, and the one being worshipped is, and has always been, you. Chapter 13. What if the path home is lit by everything you've ever lost? The night has a particular texture tonight, a soft, worn velvet against the window pane of your awareness. And in this quiet, I want to tell you a story about a man who lost everything. Not a story of tragedy, though it began that way, but a story of a map. A very strange map, you see, because it was drawn not with ink, but with absence. Its landmarks were not mountains or rivers, but the empty spaces where things once were. It begins, as so many true stories do, with a life that made perfect sense. A respected scholar, a man of God, in the way that men of cities and institutions understand God. His name was Jalāl, and he walked the well-swept streets of Konya, his footsteps echoing with the certainty of learned things. He knew the laws, the commentaries, the precise angles of prayer. His world was ordered, predictable, a room with sturdy walls. And then he met Shams. Shams was a wild creature of the desert, a man who carried nothing but the wind in his cloak, and a fire in his eyes that could see straight through the walls men build. He was not a scholar of books, but a scholar of the soul, and when he looked at Jalāl, he did not see a respected teacher. He saw a locked box, and he had the key. What happened next was a kind of annihilation. The townspeople, even Jalāl's own students, watched in scandalized confusion. The great scholar abandoned his lectures. He was seen dancing with a wild, ragged dervish. He spent hours in conversation that sounded like madness, conversations that burned away all the old questions, and left only a terrifying, brilliant silence in their wake. He was losing it all. His reputation, the respect of his peers, the very identity he had spent a lifetime constructing. It was all crumbling, like a sandcastle before the tide. And this is where we so often stop the story. We see the loss. We feel the vertigo. We think, what a pity, what a waste. But we rarely ask the most important question. What was being uncovered? Imagine a lantern, a beautiful, intricate metal lantern, polished to a high sheen. It is a prized possession. People admire its craft, its detail. But one night, a wind blows, and the candle inside is snuffed out. The owner is distraught. The lantern is dark, useless. But in that very darkness, if he would only look up, he would see that the wind has also blown away the clouds, and for the first time he can see the true, vast, star-dusted sky. The loss of the small, contained light was the prerequisite for perceiving the infinite one. This is what was happening to Jalāl. Shams was not giving him new information. He was taking away the old containers. He was breaking the lantern. The loss of his standing, that was the first flicker on the path. It showed him that the respect of others was a flimsy shelter, a house of cards in the wind of a single, honest gaze. The loss of his scholarly certainty was the second light. It revealed that knowing about God is not the same as knowing God, just as reading a menu is not the same as tasting the food. And then, the ultimate loss. Shams disappeared. Some say he was murdered, perhaps by jealous students. However it happened, he was gone. The one who had become the sun of Jalāl's universe, the center of his new, raw, open world, was vanished. This was the final, total eclipse. This was the loss of the guide, the friend, the beloved. If the other losses were lights on the path, this was a bonfire of agony. Jalaluddin was utterly, completely lost. He had no old life to return to, and now the new one had been snatched away. He would wander the streets, composing poems of such piercing grief that people would weep to hear them. He was a man hollowed out, a flute with no one to play it, and it was in this state of absolute, unresisted emptiness that the music began to flow, not from him, but through him. He stopped being Jalaluddin, the scholar who had lost his friend. He became Rumi, the one who had been found by love itself. The loss of Shams was the final, searing light that showed him the path did not lead to another person. It led through the loss of every person, every concept, every version of oneself. The beloved was not a destination to be reached, but the very ground upon which he was walking, blinded by his own tears. So, what does this mean for you, here in the quiet of your own room? Think of your own map, not the one you show the world, with its proud peaks of achievement and its rivers of success. Look instead at the blank spaces, the missed opportunity that still hums with a strange, ghostly potential, the relationship that ended, whose absence carved a canyon of depth in you that no easy companionship ever could, the dream you had to surrender, the version of yourself you had to let go of. We spend our lives trying to illuminate our victories. But what if we've been reading the map backwards? What if that heartbreak wasn't the end of your story, but the first real turning point? What if that failure wasn't a stain on your record, but the very thing that scrubbed away your arrogance and allowed you to finally see clearly? What if the loneliness you sometimes feel in a crowded room isn't a flaw in you, but a sacred space being held inside you, a space waiting for a guest that can only arrive when the noise dies down? The path home isn't lit by what you've acquired. Acquisitions build walls. They define an inside and an outside. The path home is lit by what has been taken away, because every loss, every stripping, every humiliation is a crack in the shell of the self, and through those cracks, the light gets in, or perhaps we finally realize the light was always there, and we were just too well insulated to see it. Do not curse your emptiness. It is not a sign of failure. It is the most important landmark on your journey. It is the place where the container finally breaks, and the content is revealed. The cup shatters, and you discover you were always the wine. But before we leave this thought of the shattered cup and the spilled wine, there is another silence to listen to, one that asks a question not of loss, but of a most peculiar kind of creation. Chapter 14. Is the deepest love the one that shatters you open? There's a silence that comes after a question like that, a silence where the old answers don't quite fit, and the new ones haven't yet arrived. It's in that very silence that we can approach this next thought, a thought that feels almost like a secret or a danger. Is the deepest love the one that shatters you open? We speak of love so often as a comfort, a shelter, a safe harbor, and it can be. But the love the poets speak of, the love that Rumi found, that is a different force entirely. It is not a quiet pond. It is a tsunami. It does not build a roof over your head. It pulls the roof from your very foundations until you are standing under the naked, star-filled sky of your own existence, trembling and alive. Think of Rumi's world after Shams vanished. The love did not end. It intensified. It became a raging fire with no object to burn, It had to consume the one who was feeling it. This is the great, terrifying alchemy of this kind of love. It uses the pain of separation as its fuel. The longing isn't a problem to be solved. It is the engine of transformation. He wrote of this, his words spilling out from a heart that was not just broken, but pulverized into a finer dust. He didn't write, "I miss my friend." He wrote of being a lover torn from the beloved, a soul screaming in the agony of divine absence. This is the key. The human love for shams became a doorway, a painful, wrenching doorway, into the cosmic love for the source of all things. The personal heartbreak was the model for the universal one. Imagine a seed, a perfect, smooth, self-contained little thing. It is whole. It is safe. It has its identity. I am a seed. But for it to become what it is meant to be, it must be buried. It must be cracked open by the damp, insistent pressure of the earth. It must feel, in its very core, the terror of dissolution, the dark, the cold, the feeling of its own walls breaking. It would cry out, if it could, "I am being destroyed," and it would be right. But the destruction is not the end. It is the only way for the green shoot to reach for the sun. The seed's greatest tragedy is the tree's beginning. This is the love that shatters. It isn't cruel. It is necessary. Our identities, our egos, are like that seed. They are hard, defined, separate. They say, "This is me. This is mine. This is what I believe." They are comfortable, and they are a perfect barrier to the ocean of love that is our true nature. How can the cup be filled if it is already full of itself? So this love, this fierce, divine affection, does what must be done. It brings a shams into your life. It brings a loss, a failure, a crisis of faith so profound that your entire worldview crumbles. It shatters the cup, and in that moment of shattering, there is indescribable pain, but there is also freedom. For the first time, the air can get to what was inside all along. We spend our lives building fortresses around our hearts. We stack stones of achievement. We mortar them with the opinions of others. We hang flags of our past victories. We think we are building a palace, but we are building a tomb. The love that shatters is the earthquake that knocks it all down, and when the dust settles, you are standing in the ruins, and you realize you are not the fortress at all. You are the open sky that was always surrounding it. You were just too busy admiring the walls to notice. This is why the love poems of the mystics so often sound like cries of agony. They are the cries of the seed breaking, the metal being melted in the furnace, the ego being unmade. It is a violent grace. It is not for the faint of heart. It is for the one who is tired of the simulation, tired of the safe, manageable, miniature version of love. It is for the one who is ready to trade the portrait for the living subject, even if it burns their eyes to look upon it. So when you feel a cracking in your own life, a time when a love or a dream falls apart so completely that you feel you are coming apart with it, pause. Before the despair rushes in, listen. In the sound of the shattering, you might just hear the first, faint notes of a freedom you could never have imagined. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. You are being opened. And as we sit in the quiet aftermath of that opening, among the scattered pieces of what was once so solid, a new presence makes itself known. Not the fierce wind of the shattering love, but a quieter, more patient energy. One that asks what happens next, in the fertile space of the ruins. Chapter 15. Who tends the garden in the ruins of who you thought you were? After the storm has passed, and the walls of the old self lie in rubble around you, there comes a strange and pregnant silence. The dust settles. The frantic energy of holding everything together, of being somebody, is gone, and in that quiet, a new question emerges from the very earth beneath your feet. It's not, "How do I rebuild?" That is the old mind, scrambling for familiar plans. The question is softer, more curious. Who tends the garden in the ruins of who you thought you were? For a long time, perhaps, there is no one. The ruins are just ruins, a place of memory and grief. You walk through them, kicking at stones that were once cornerstones, tracing the faded outlines of rooms that once held your certainties. This is a necessary time. The ground must lie fallow. The soul must mourn what it has lost, even if what was lost was a prison. But then, something shifts, almost imperceptibly at first. You notice a green shoot pushing up between two cracked slabs, a wildflower blooming in what was once the basement of your ambitions. Life is returning, but it is not the life you planned. It is something wilder, more resilient, more truly its own. And it begs the question, who is planting this? Who is watering this? This is the great mystery that Rumi spent the second half of his life exploring. After the fire of his grief had burned away the man named Jalāl, what remained was not a void. It was a vast, fertile emptiness. And moving in that emptiness was a presence, a gardener. He called this presence the friend, the beloved, the guest, the one who plants the cypress tree of the soul and tends it in secret. This is not a metaphor for picking yourself up by your bootstraps. The ego, the you that you thought you were, is the one who built the now shattered fortress. That architect is in no position to design the garden. No, the tending is done by a deeper intelligence, a wisdom that knows the seasons of the heart, that knows exactly what seeds to plant in the compost of your broken dreams. It is the part of you that is not you at all, but is seamlessly part of the whole unfolding universe. Imagine a plot of land. 4 years you worked it, trying to grow only roses, because roses were valuable, admired. You fertilized, you pruned, you worried over them. Then a flood comes and washes it all away. The rose bushes are gone. Exhausted, you finally stop. You stop trying. And in that surrender, the land does what it has always wanted to do. Clover arrives to fix the nitrogen in the soil. Dandelions push their deep roots into the compacted earth, breaking it up. Wild grasses blanket the ground, holding the moisture. The land is healing itself. It is being tended by a wisdom far older and more profound than your plan for a rose garden. The soul is that land. The gardener is that innate, life-giving intelligence. Your job is not to direct it, but to finally, humbly, get out of its way, to stop being the anxious owner and become the grateful inhabitant, to learn the difference between forcing an outcome and nurturing a growth. Rumi's poetry became that garden. It wasn't crafted by the careful, scholarly mind he once possessed. It erupted from this tended emptiness. It was spontaneous, organic, overflowing with life. The words were like vines climbing the trellis of meter, the images blooming like unexpected flowers. He was not the poet. He was the soil from which the poetry grew. The gardener was speaking, and he was simply the field, listening. So for you, in the quiet spaces of your own life, when you feel the ache of a lost identity, a failed role, a broken dream, pay attention to what is stirring in the rich, dark soil of that loss. Don't rush to rebuild the old structure. Wait. Listen. What small, quiet impulse of joy arises for no reason? What unexpected compassion softens your hardened heart? What new curiosity pulls you toward a book you would never have read before? These are the first tender shoots. This is the gardener at work. The one who tends the ruins is the same one who arranged for the shattering in the first place. The love that breaks the shell is the love that nourishes the kernel. It is a single, continuous, benevolent force. Your suffering was the plough that turned the hard soil. Your confusion was the rain that made it mud. And now, in the quiet of this night, the seeds are sleeping in the dark, gathering their strength. You don't need to know what they will become. You only need to trust the hand that planted them, and the season that is coming. Chapter 16. What if the only real love is the one that obliterates you? There is a love we all know. It's the love that builds a shelter around us. The love that says, "I will keep you safe." It's the love of a warm room on a cold night, of a steady hand in the dark. It is a good love, a necessary love. But there is another kind of love. A love that does not build, but dismantles. A love that does not shelter, but exposes you to the elements. A love that does not say, "I will keep you safe," but whispers, "I will show you what you are made of, even if it scatters you to the wind." What if that is the only real love there is? Tonight, let's not think of the love that comforts the self. Let's consider the love that annihilates it. It begins, as so many stories of ruin and revelation do, in a marketplace in Konya. A man named Jalāl Rumi, a respected scholar, a pillar of theology and law. He had a self, a very well-constructed one. It was built of knowledge, of status, of a clear understanding of his place in the world. It was a sturdy house, with thick walls. And then he met Shams of Tabriz. Shams was not a builder of houses. He was a whirlwind, a man of fire and impossible questions. He was the kind of love that obliterates. We have this idea that profound change should be graceful, like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly in the hidden sanctuary of a cocoon. But some transformations are not gentle. They are more like a lightning strike on a dry field. There is no gentle metamorphosis. There is only fire, a consuming blaze that leaves nothing but ash in its wake. And from that ash, something new, something that could never have been planned, begins to grow. Imagine Rumi's study. The scrolls, the ink, the quiet order of a mind that has catalogued God. He knew about God. He could quote the law. He could pass the scripture. His love for the divine was a love of the known, a safe distance. And then Shams enters, and he asks a question that isn't in any of the books. A question that has no answer, only a consequence. He looks at the scholar, the teacher, the man of substance, and he asks, "Who are you?" Not what is your name, not what is your title, but who is the one who holds the title? Who is the one who breathes behind the knowledge? Who is the one standing in this room, right now, before any thought, any label, any story you tell about yourself? That question is a spark, and it landed in the tinder of Rumi's soul. This is the love that obliterates. It is not a love of who you have become, but a love of who you are before you became anything. It sees the costume, the armor, the carefully constructed persona, and it loves it, yes, but it loves what is beneath it more. And so it begins, quietly, insistently, to take it all apart. Think of your own life, not the grand story you tell at a dinner party, or the curated profile online. Think of the quiet moments of dismantling, the loss that left you speechless, the failure that stripped you of a title you thought was yours, the criticism that found the one crack in your foundation. At the time, it felt like an enemy. It felt like chaos. It felt like the universe was being cruel. But what if it was a kind of love? A severe, unyielding, divine love that knew you could not reach the ocean while you were clinging to the puddle? The love that says, "This identity you have is too small for you. This happiness you seek is too fleeting. Let me take it from you." Rumi did not just have pleasant, philosophical chats with shams. He was ruined by him. His students complained. The town whispered. The respectable scholar was seen dancing, weeping, writing poetry about taverns and drunkenness. The structure of his life was burning down, and in the heart of that fire he found a different kind of knowing, not knowledge about God, but a union with God. He wrote, "I have been burned by the fire of love and become smoke. Smoke has no shape. It cannot be held. It rises, and it dissipates, and it becomes one with the air. That is the goal, not to be a better, shinier self, but to be no self, to be so utterly taken apart that the only thing left is the essence, the breath, the presence that was there all along." This is a terrifying thought for a man. We are builders. We are fixers. Our worth is so often tied to what we have built, what we have accumulated, our careers, our reputations, our composure. The idea that our deepest fulfillment might lie not in building a stronger fortress, but in allowing it to be dismantled. That feels like surrender. It feels like failure. But consider the seed. It has a hard shell. It has an identity. I am a seed. It is safe, contained, whole. For it to become what it is meant to be, that shell must be broken. It must be buried in the dark, damp, chaotic earth. It must allow itself to be decomposed, to have its very form broken down. From the outside, it is destruction. From the inside, it is a becoming. It is the only way to reach for the sun. The love that obliterates is the love of the gardener who breaks the shell. It is the love of the fire that consumes the wood so it can become heat and light. It is the love of the friend who will not let you hide behind your own mask. So when you feel the ground giving way beneath you, when a long-held belief about yourself is proven false, when a heartbreak or a loss seems to have taken everything you thought was you, pause in the wreckage. Don't rush to rebuild the same house on the same shaky ground. Breathe in the empty space. Ask the silence, what has been burned away? And what is left, now that the smoke is clearing? Perhaps you will find that what is left is quieter, lighter, less certain, but more real. It has no name, no title. It simply is, and in that isness, you might just hear the faintest echo of the ocean, calling to the drop of water that has finally, mercifully, been released from its fragile, lonely cup. Transition. And as we sit here in the quiet aftermath of that fire, a question naturally forms in the stillness. If we are not the architects of our own lives, but the very clay, then whose hands are these that shape us, and whose hands are these that break us, so that we might be remade? Chapter 17. Who is the true potter, you or the hands that break you? We spend our lives trying to become the potter. We gather the clay of our ambitions, our relationships, our accomplishments. We sit at the wheel of our will, and we try to shape something beautiful, something strong, something that will last. We work with care, with intention. We smooth the walls. We define the shape. We call this vessel my life, and we believe with every fiber of our being that we are its creator. But then, a hand we did not expect arrives. It might be the hand of loss, of sudden failure. It might be the slow, erosive drip of disappointment. It might be an illness, a betrayal, a dream that dies quietly in the night. And this hand does not help us shape the vessel. It strikes it. It cracks it. It sometimes shatters it entirely. And in the midst of the fragments, we ask the oldest, most desperate question. Why? Why would the universe break this thing I worked so hard to build? But what if we are asking the wrong question? What if the question is not, why did this break? But, who is breaking it? And more than that, who is the true potter here? Imagine a lump of clay on the wheel. It has a mind of its own. It believes it is shaping itself. It pushes here, it pulls there. It strives to become an elegant, thin-walled vase. It is proud of its progress. But the real potter, the one with the vision, knows that the clay is too thick, that the form is weak. The potter applies pressure. The clay, from its limited perspective, feels only a crushing force. It resists. It complains. "You are ruining me," it cries. The potter, with a wisdom the clay cannot comprehend, knows that to create a vessel that can truly hold something, it must be centered. It must be hollow. And to be hollow, it must be opened. The pressure is not punishment. It is love. The collapsing of its current form is not destruction. It is the beginning of a new, more capable one. Rumi speaks to this from the perspective of the clay. He says, "I am like a needle in the hand of the tailor. I am being used, and I am happy." The needle does not decide the garment. It does not know the final design. It simply allows itself to be guided by a hand that sees the whole pattern. Your life, the one you thought you were building, that was the first tentative form. The you that you are so protective of, the ego, the self-image, is that initial shape. It is necessary, but it is not the final product. The true potter, the divine craftsman, has a different vision, a grander one, a vision of a vessel that can hold an ocean, not just a few drops of water. So the hands that break you are not enemies. They are the same hands that are making you. The loss that hollows you out is not a tragedy. It is the creation of your capacity. The failure that crumbles your pride is not a defeat. It is the leveling of an unsteady foundation so a stronger one can be laid. Think of the times you have been broken, really broken, not just inconvenienced, but fundamentally rearranged. In the moment, it was pure agony. It was chaos. But later, weeks, months, years later, did you not find that the broken place was precisely where something new entered? That your capacity for compassion grew because you had been wounded? That your understanding of strength changed because you had been brought to your knees? That your ability to truly listen appeared only after your own certainties had been silenced? The cracks are not where you fell apart. They are where the light got in. They are also where the light gets out. We so desperately want to be the authors of our own story. But what if we are the parchment? What if we are the poem being written? The pain comes from clinging to the pen and trying to write the sentences ourselves, when our only real job is to be a clean, receptive page, waiting for the ink of experience to fall, in whatever pattern it may. This is the great surrender. It is not passivity. It is the most active form of trust. It is to look at the broken pieces of your old life, sitting there in a pile, and to whisper, "Very well. This form did not serve. What will you make of me now?" You are both the clay and the witness to the shaping. You are the thing being made and the awareness that watches the making. The potter is not some distant tyrant in the sky. The potter is the intelligent, loving, sometimes severe life force that moves through everything, through the joy that lifts you and the grief that levels you. It is the same force. So when the next blow falls, and it will, because the wheel never stops turning, try, if you can, to take a breath in the space between the impact and the shattering. In that breath, remember the potter. Remember the needle and the tailor. You are not being destroyed. You are being used. You are being shaped for a purpose so vast your current form cannot even imagine it. Allow the shaping. Trust the hands that hold you, even as they apply the pressure that remakes your world. Transition. And as we learn to trust those hands, to become more receptive to their shaping, we inevitably arrive at the final, most intimate frontier. Not the noise of the shaping, but the silence that follows. The silence we may have spent a lifetime trying to fill, now becomes the very thing we are asked to enter. Chapter 18. Is the silence you fear the same one that will sing you home? So much of a man's life is a war against silence. We fill our days with noise, the hum of engines, the chatter of devices, the soundtrack of our own busy thoughts. We enter a quiet room, and our hand instinctively reaches for a switch, a button, something to generate a vibration, a signal, a proof that we are here and the world is there. Silence, we have been taught, is emptiness. It is absence. It is the void waiting to swallow our significance. We fear it like a missing step in the dark. We equate it with loneliness, with oblivion. But what if the silence we have been running from is not empty at all? What if it is the most profound fullness there is? What if it isn't the absence of sound, but the presence of something else entirely? And what if the song it sings is the one our soul has been aching to hear? Since the moment we were born, Rumi tells us, the moment you accept what troubles you've been given, the door will open. I have always wondered what is on the other side of that door. Not more trouble, surely. Not more noise. I think it is this silence. The welcoming, the nourishing, the utterly embracing silence. Think of silence not as nothing, but as the womb of all sound. Every note of music, every word of love, every poem that has ever stirred your heart, was born from that silence and returns to it. The silence is not the opposite of the symphony. It is what holds the symphony. It is the canvas for the painting. It is the awareness that witnesses the thought. The silence you fear, the one that feels like abandonment, that is the silence of a room when you are alone with your worries. That is the echo of your own isolated self. But that is not the true silence. That is just the noise of the ego, rattling around in an empty house, wondering where all the furniture has gone. The real silence is something else. It is the presence that arrives when you stop running, when you stop filling the space, when you finally exhaust the effort of being someone and simply are. Imagine a deep, ancient forest. On the surface, there is noise, the wind in the pines, the call of a bird, the rustle of a creature in the undergrowth. This is the level of our daily lives. But beneath that, there is a deeper stratum, the silence of the roots delving into the earth, the silence of the stone at the heart of the mountain. This silence is not dead. It is intensely, vibrantly alive. It is the ground of being itself. This is the silence that Rumi points to when he says, "Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. God is not a being who speaks in the void. God is the speaking silence. The divine is not in the thunder, but in the quiet that receives the thunderclap and is unchanged by it. Your soul knows this silence. It remembers it. It is the home you came from. The constant noise of the world is a forgetfulness, a distraction from that primal memory. The heartache, the longing, the restlessness you sometimes feel for no reason, that is not a sign that something is missing. It is a homing instinct. It is the soul's compass straining toward its true north, which is this vast, interior quiet. So how do you meet it? You don't have to go to a mountain cave. You simply have to turn your attention inward, away from the chatter, and listen. Not for anything in particular. Just listen. Listen to the space between your heartbeats. Listen to the stillness at the bottom of your breath. after the exhale is complete and before the inhale begins. There is a doorway there. In that silence, you will find that you are not alone. You are never alone. You are immersed in the same presence that holds the stars in their courses. The problems that seemed so monumental begin to shrink to their true size. The identity you worked so hard to maintain relaxes its grip. You are no longer a man shouldering a burden. You are the awareness that is aware of the burden. And in that simple shift, everything changes. The silence does not judge your past. It does not anxiety about your future. It simply meets you exactly where you are and holds you without condition. This is the silence that sings. Its song has no words, no melody you can hum. Its song is the feeling of belonging. It is the vibration of being utterly, completely, and unconditionally accepted. It is the sound of the ocean welcoming the river home. So tonight, as the world outside your window grows still, don't see the silence as an emptiness to be feared. See it as a presence arriving, an old friend, a timeless love. Don't reach for the switch. Don't grasp for a thought. Let the war be over. Lay down your weapons of distraction and just listen. Listen as the silence gathers around you, not as a void, but as a blessing. Listen as it fills the room, fills your body, fills the spaces between your bones. It has been waiting for you your whole life, and now you are here, and it is singing. Chapter 19. What whisper remains after the self has burned away? The night has a particular texture tonight, doesn't it? A soft weight, like a well-worn blanket. And in this quiet, our minds often turn to the projects we've left unfinished, the conversations that trailed off, the person we meant to be, but somehow aren't. We carry this collection of selves, this accumulated I, and it can feel so solid, so burdensome. It's the voice that narrates the day, that worries over yesterday, that plans for a tomorrow. It's the story we've been telling ourselves for decades. But what if that story is not the main character? What if it's just the kindling? There was a man, a scholar of law, a pillar of his community in 13th century Persia. His name was Jalāl. He was a man of books and rules, of defined boundaries. He knew who he was. And then he met Shams of Tabriz, a wandering mystic, a wild son of a man who did not respect boundaries. Shams did not see the scholar, the pillar. He saw only the potential for fire. Their meeting was a collision, and it lit a fuse in Jalāl's soul. The respectable scholar was consumed by a frantic, divine love. The man he had been, the solid, predictable self, began to smolder. We think of burning as destruction, as a tragedy, a house on fire, a forest ablaze. We see only the loss. But in the alchemy of the spirit, fire is also a transformer. It refines. It clears away the undergrowth so that new, unexpected life can find the sun. Rumi, the poet he became, didn't just write about a metaphorical spark. He spoke of a conflagration that leaves nothing behind but essence. Set your life on fire, he said. Seek those who fan your flames. What did he mean? He wasn't talking about ambition, about burning the midnight oil to get ahead. This is a different kind of work. It's the work of letting the smaller self, the self that is worried about what the neighbors think, the self that holds onto old resentments like prized possessions, the self that believes it is separate and alone. It's letting that self be fuel. It burns in the heat of a love that is too vast to be personal. It burns in the silence of true prayer. It burns in the moments of breathtaking awe, when you look at a star-filled sky and for a single heart-stopping second, you forget that you are looking at it. In that moment, the I is absent, and what is left? A pure, unmediated looking, a unity. Imagine a candle. It has a form, a shape, a specific weight. It is a thing, but its purpose is not to remain a solid thing. Its purpose is to give itself to the flame. The wax melts. The wick chars. The solid becomes liquid, becomes light, becomes heat. It is a total surrender, and in that surrender, it ceases to be a candle and becomes illumination. It becomes what it was always meant to be. The candle's self is gone, but would anyone say the candle was destroyed? Or was it fulfilled? This is the whisper. This is what remains after the fire. Not a new, better, shinier self. Not a you 2.0, but something far more fundamental. A presence, an awareness, a love that does not belong to anyone. When Rumi says, "I have been a knife in the hands of a thief, I have been a tree growing in a temple," he is not speaking as the man, Jalāl. He is speaking from the ashes. He is speaking as the awareness that has cycled through all forms, that has worn all costumes. The man burned away, and the poet was what was left. The poet was not a person, but a portal. So in the quiet of your own life, in the small hours when the world is asleep, you might feel the heat of this possibility. It's in the longing that a beautiful piece of music stirs in you, a longing for a home you can't name. It's in the exhaustion of trying to manage your own reputation, your own story. It's in the quiet surrender after a failure, when you have nothing left to prove. These are all little sparks. They are invitations to let go. What whisper remains? It is not a word you can hear with your ears. It is the silence that your thoughts have been chattering over for a lifetime. It is the vast, open sky that appears once the clouds of your personal drama have been blown away. It is the love that you feel for a sleeping child, a love so pure it asks for nothing in return, not even recognition. In that moment, you are not a parent, a protector, a provider. You are simply that love. The you has stepped aside. The fire is not a punishment. It is a grace. It is the beloved's way of clearing the house, of making space. The walls of your identity, so carefully constructed, they keep you safe, yes, but they also keep you small. They keep you in a room, separate from the ocean of being that is just on the other side. Burning them down is terrifying. It feels like death. And in a way, it is. It is the death of the illusion of separation. But what is born from those ashes? Nothing that can be named. Nothing that can be claimed. Just a quiet, pervasive peace. A sense of being exactly where you are meant to be. Because where else could you be? A belonging so profound that it needs no other to belong to. This is the secret the ashes hold. They are not the end of the story. They are the beginning of the true one. The story where there is no single hero, only the unfolding, the dance, the whispered yes that answers every question before it is even asked. But before we leave this quiet, smouldering space, this notion of a self reduced to essential ashes, a question naturally arises from the embers. If the I is the fuel, then who or what is the one holding the torch? This leads us gently, inevitably, to the next silence, to a mystery that has echoed through poetry and prayer for centuries. Chapter 20. Is the true beloved the one who sets the fire, or the ashes themselves? We often speak of love as a comfort, a sanctuary, a quiet harbor after the long, rough seas of the world. And it can be that. But there is another love, a deeper, more terrifying current, that does not build a shelter for you, but instead pulls the roof from over your head. It does not offer you a chair by the fire. It asks you to walk into the flames. This is the love that Rumi sang of, with a voice raw from the smoke. It's a love that is less about embrace and more about eviction. It evicts you from your own small life. And this brings us to a question that feels almost like a secret, something whispered in the confessional of the heart. When we are burned by this divine arson, who are we to worship? The hand that struck the match, or the profound, fertile silence that comes after the blaze? Imagine, if you will, the love that arrives in your life like a catastrophe. It might not be a person. It could be a loss that hollows you out, a failure that dismantles every plan you ever had, a beauty so severe it cracks your heart open like a nut. This is Shams of Tabriz. This is the one who comes as the fire setter. They are the catalyst, the divine disruption. Their role is not to be nice. Their role is to be necessary. They see the prison of your comfort, the complacency you have mistaken for peace, and they hold up a mirror that shows you the chains. And in that reflection, you see a longing so immense it frightens you. This beloved, this fire setter, is ruthless in their compassion. They will burn down the entire world you have built, if that world is built on a lie. Rumi's entire life's work was fueled by the absence of chance. The man who set the fire was murdered, vanished, leaving Rumi in a state of frantic, desolate longing. He wasn't writing poems about holding hands in a garden. He was writing howls into the wind for a ghost, and in that howling he discovered something. The fire setter was gone, but the fire itself. The fire remained. The longing itself became the presence. The ache was the connection. This is the mystery. The one who sets the fire is the beloved as the divine agent, the cause of the transformation. We are drawn to this figure, to the drama, the story. We mythologize the person, the event, the moment that changed everything. We spend our lives looking for another Shams, another catastrophe, another lightning strike. But that is to remain a devotee of the flame, and not of the transformation it wrecks. Now, turn your gaze to the ashes. What are they? They are what is real when everything false is gone. They are humility. They are surrender. They are the end of knowing. They are the quiet, potent truth that remains. When your opinions, your ego, your resume, your defenses, have all turned to dust, and in that state, there is a different kind of beloved. This is the beloved not as the cause, but as the result. The beloved as the state of grace that exists in total emptiness. The ashes are not a wasteland. They are the most fertile ground imaginable. Everything that grows from them is real. So, is the true beloved the one who sets the fire, or the ashes themselves? Perhaps the journey is from one to the other. We fall in love with the lightning bolt that shatters the old, dead tree. We worship its power, its terrifying beauty. But eventually, we must learn to love the rich, dark soil that the decomposed tree becomes. The lightning bolt is dramatic, but it's momentary. The soil is eternal, and it gives life to everything. In your own experience, you can feel this. There is the heartbreak that shatters you. For a long time, you are in love with the pain, with the story of the one who broke you. That person is the fire setter in your personal mythology. But if you are fortunate, there comes a day when you realize the pain has become a quiet wisdom. The story has lost its sting. What remains is a deeper capacity for compassion, a clearer understanding of your own soul. You are no longer in love with the fire. You are grateful for the space it cleared. The ashes have become your home, and in that home there is a peace that the dramatic fire could never provide. The true beloved, then, is the one we meet when we stop looking for a who at all. It is the sacred reality that permeates the emptiness. It is the silence that sings in the center of the ruins. To worship only the fire setter is to live in perpetual, frantic seeking. To learn to worship the ashes, that is to have found. And this finding, this arrival in the quiet kingdom of ashes, leads us to a final, gentle mystery. If the singer has been transformed, if the I has been burned away, and what speaks is the essence itself, then what is the nature of the song? Where does its melody go when the individual voice is no longer there to claim it? Chapter 21. Where does the song go when the singer is no longer there? We spend our lives building a voice, a way of speaking, a style, a signature. We want to be heard, to be understood, to leave a mark with the sound of our existence. Our voice is our identity. It's how we say, I am here. But what happens when the need for that particular here dissolves? When the singer, in the most profound sense, steps aside. Rumi, the poet, produced an ocean of verse, but he often insisted he was not the source. He was a hollow reed. The wind of the divine blew through him, and the music that resulted was not his. The reed flute, the ney, is his most enduring symbol. It is a simple tube, empty of itself, but when breath moves through it, it produces a sound of such piercing beauty that it expresses the longing of the entire universe. But think of the reed. To become a flute, it is cut from its bed, hollowed out, its core drilled away. It undergoes a kind of death. Its former life, rooted and whole, is over. This is the preparation of the singer. The self must be hollowed out. The core of ego, of personal desire and separate will, must be cleared to become a conduit. So, when we read Rumi's poems, we are not hearing the man, Jalāl, boast of his love. We are hearing the love itself, using the man as its instrument. The singer is gone. The song remains. But where does it go? It goes into the listener. It becomes part of the air. It ceases to be a possession and becomes an atmosphere. A poem is not a thing that is finished. It is an event that begins when a reader's eyes touch the page, when a listener's heart resonates with the rhythm. The song leaves the singer and takes up residence in the silent, waiting spaces of those who hear it. It goes where it is needed. It becomes the solace for a grieving heart in a room 1,000 miles away and 8 centuries later. It becomes the language for a joy that someone else could not name. This is the secret of legacy. It is not about building a monument with your name on it. It is about becoming so empty, so clear, that the eternal truths can flow through you into the world. Your personal story becomes irrelevant. What matters is the quality of the song that used you as its temporary instrument. The singer is the cup. The song is the water. The cup can break, but the water rejoins the ocean and will be drunk again, will quench another thirst. In the quiet of your own life, you have experienced this. You hear a piece of music, and for a moment, you are not you. You are the melody. The composer is long dead. The musician is a stranger, but the song is alive in you, shaping your emotions, altering your breath. The song has found a new singer, you. Or you read a line from an ancient text, and it speaks directly to your situation, as if the author knew you, knew your struggle. The author is gone, but the song is timeless, and it has wandered through the years to find a home in you. So, where does the song go? It goes nowhere, because it was never contained in the first place. It was always free. The singer was just a temporary location, a brief gathering point for a beauty that belongs to no one. When the singer is no longer there, the song simply continues. It was never his song. It was the song. And in this, there is a deep and abiding comfort for us. For all our worries about our voice being too small, our impact too faint, the pressure is off. We don't have to be great originals. We just have to become clear. We have to allow ourselves to be hollowed out by life's sorrows and joys, to be carved into a flute by grace and suffering alike. Our job is not to sing our own song, but to be so authentically ourselves, which is to say, so empty of pretense, that the universal song can find a voice through us, and in the end, the singer and the song were never two. The true singer is the song, and when the small, personal self dissolves, what you are left with is not silence, but the eternal music that was playing all along. You were just too busy narrating your own life to hear it. But now, listen, not with your ears, with your very being. It's the hum of the stars, the rhythm of your own heart, the quiet whisper of the turning world. It is the song that never began and will never end. And you are not just hearing it. You are it. And in that knowing, every separation falls away, and there is only this, infinite, tender, lullaby. Chapter 22. What if the only way to hold the light is to become a window? There is a story they rarely tell about the man before he was Rumi, the scholar, the jurist, the man of books and law and impeccable reputation. He lived in a house of well-arranged thoughts, each belief a sturdy piece of furniture, each argument a locked door. He knew where everything was. He could walk the halls of his own mind in the dark and never stub a toe. There is a profound safety in such a life, a comfort. But comfort, as we so often discover in the quiet hours, is not the same as warmth. And then came the fire. His name was Shams of Tabriz, a wandering dervish, a man who carried a different kind of truth, one that did not fit on shelves or in syllogisms. He did not offer Rumi more knowledge. He did not offer better arguments. He looked at the magnificent, well-ordered house of the scholar's soul, and he did not ask to be let in. He simply began to take the walls down, brick by brick. Imagine that moment. Not the ecstasy, not the poetry yet, but the sheer, gut-wrenching terror of it, the creak of a long-held belief splintering, the dust of a collapsed certainty filling the air. To have defined yourself by what you know, by the walls you have built, and to have a friend, a beloved, who looks at you with such fierce love and begins, gently, relentlessly, to dismantle you. This is not a battle. It is a deconstruction. It is the realization that the fortress you built to protect your soul has become the very thing that cages it. And this is where the question finds its breath. What if the only way to hold the light is to become a window? We spend our lives trying to be containers, vessels. We fill ourselves with accomplishments, with relationships, with identities. I am a businessman, a father, a man who knows how things work. We polish this vessel, we protect it from cracks, we believe its purpose is to be full. But a vessel, no matter how beautiful, can only ever hold what its shape and size allow. And eventually, everything within it grows still, stagnant. But a window does not hold the light. It cannot possess it. A window's purpose is to be transparent, to be empty of itself. Its glory is not in what it contains, but in what passes through it. When the sun strikes a stained glass window, it does not illuminate the glass. The glass illuminates the world by transforming the light, by breaking it into 1,000 colors, by telling a story with it as it passes through. This was the alchemy of Rumi's despair. When Shams disappeared, when the beloved was taken from him, the last of his walls crumbled. The vessel of the scholar shattered completely, and in that utter devastation, he did not find emptiness. He found transparency. He became a window. The poetry that poured out of him was not him holding the light, but the light passing through him. The grief, the joy, the longing, the ecstasy. It was all just the sun streaming through the colored glass of his broken heart. So consider, in the quiet of your own life, the structures you have built, the identity you polish and protect, the ways you try to hold on to love, onto peace, onto a sense of who you are. What if the effort itself is the barrier? What if the peace you seek is not a treasure to be found, but a light that is always waiting to stream through you? If only you would have the courage to become a little less solid, to become a window, clean and clear, through which the infinite can finally wave at itself. But before we leave this image of the transparent self behind, there is a silence that follows the light's passing, a quiet so deep, it has its own voice, and it leads us to a question that hums in the marrow of the night. Chapter 23. Who is truly speaking when you finally stop your own voice? There is a threshold in exhaustion. You've felt it. It's not the tiredness of a long day, though that can be the path to it. It's the exhaustion of the self, the weariness of the internal narrator who has been talking, planning, worrying, justifying, and regretting for decades without a single moment's pause. It's the voice that narrates your life as you live it, a constant, low-level hum of me, and I, and mine. We mistake this voice for consciousness itself. We believe that if it were to stop, we would cease to be. This is the ego's oldest, most fundamental trick, to convince you that it is the singer, when it is only ever the song. Rumi crossed this threshold. After the fire of shams burned through him, after the initial ecstasy and the subsequent shattering grief, there came a stillness, a point of surrender where the man, Jalāl ad-Din, simply had no more to say. He had argued, he had pleaded, he had composed thousands of lines of poetry, he had searched the world for his friend, and finally he was done. The well of his own personal will, his own personal voice, ran dry, and it was in that silence that another voice began to speak. Listen to his poetry now, not as a lecture, but as a whisper in this very room. He does not say, "I think this is how love works." He says, "I am not the reed flute, I am the breath that moves through it." The reed flute is hollow. It is nothing but an empty channel, a shaped piece of emptiness. It is useless until the musician places it to his lips and gives it his breath. Only then does it sing. Its song is not its own. It is entirely dependent on the breath moving through it. Its beauty is its surrender. Who, then, was speaking through Rumi? Was it still the scholar from Konya? Or had that man become the flute, and the breath moving through him was something else? Something that had no name, because it was the source of all names? He called it the beloved. He called it the friend. You can call it God, the universe, the ground of being, life itself. The label is just another sound the flute might make. The truth is in the experience of the breath. In your own life, you have likely tasted moments of this. It's that flash of perfect, unthinking insight when the solution to a problem appears not because you found it, but because you stopped looking. It's the word of comfort you offered a friend that came from a place deeper than your own knowledge. It's the moment of creativity, of flow, where you look at what you have painted or built or written and think, "I didn't do this. This came through me." In those moments, your own noisy, insistent I stepped aside, and for a fleeting instant you became a conduit for an intelligence, a grace, a music far vaster than your own. The goal, then, is not to become a better speaker, but to become a better listener, to cultivate the quiet, not as an empty void, but as a fertile ground. to tire out the little king of the self, not through force, but through a gentle, persistent attention to the spaces between your thoughts. For it is in those spaces, in that profound and personal silence, that you might just hear the rustle of the universe, turning a page, and discover who, or what, has been reading to you all along. And as we listen to that vast reading silence, we cannot help but notice the shape of what is left behind, the outline of our former selves, cast upon the ground, a shadow that is no longer a threat, but a testament. Chapter 24. Is the shadow you flee from the very thing that acknowledges the sun? We are taught, from a very young age, to walk toward the light, to be positive, to be strong, to overcome our darkness. We are given a map of the soul where certain territories, grief, fear, anger, insecurity, doubt, are marked with warning signs. We spend a lifetime and a fortune trying to outrun our own shadow. We call this growth. We call it healing. But what if the map is wrong? Rumi did not transcend his pain. He did not get over his grief for shams. He did the one thing we are most afraid to do. He turned and faced it. He invited it in. He did not just make peace with his shadow. He recognized it as the most faithful companion he had ever had. He wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Notice he doesn't say the wound is healed and then the light gets in. He says the wound itself is the opening. Think of a physical shadow. It is not an independent thing. It has no substance of its own. It is created by a single, undeniable fact. There is a light source, and there is an object standing in its path. The shadow is proof. It is the absolute, undeniable evidence that you are standing in the presence of light. Without the light, there is no shadow. Without you, standing right where you are, there is no unique, particular shape upon the ground. The parts of yourself you have been running from, your regrets, your failures, the aspects of your personality you deem unworthy, the old sorrows that live in the basement of your heart, these are not monsters. They are your shadows. They are not flaws in your design. They are the proof that you are a real, solid, complex being, standing in the brilliant, unforgiving light of a conscious life. To try and surgically remove them is to wish yourself away, to become a ghost, without form, without substance, without a story. Your grief does not mean you are broken. It means you loved deeply. Your fear does not mean you are weak. It means you are about to step into something unknown and important. Your anger is often a signal that a boundary of your soul has been crossed. These are not enemies to be defeated. They are loyal, if misunderstood, servants. They are the shapes you cast, and they exist for one sole reason, to show you, in the most intimate way possible, that you are standing in the light. So tonight, as the world outside grows quiet and the light in the room softens, consider making a different kind of peace, not with a forced smile, but with a slow, deliberate turning. Look at the shape you are casting on the floor, that silhouette of all you have been, all you have lost, all you fear you are. Do not ask it to leave. Thank it, for its very existence is the only thing that confirms, beyond any doubt, that you are here, and that the sun, somehow, is shining on you, even in the deepest, darkest part of the night. Chapter 25. What if the truth arrives dressed as a fury? There is a story they rarely tell at the beginning, before the poetry, before the whirling, before the name Rumi was a whisper on the wind of the divine. There was a man named Jalāl, a scholar, a preacher, a pillar of his community in Konya. He was, by all accounts, a man who had built his life like a beautiful, sturdy house. The walls were scripture. The roof was respectability. The foundation was a logic that could hold the weight of the world. He knew who he was, and it is a terrifying thing for a man to know who he is. for it often means he has stopped asking the question. He would have remained in that house, I think. We all would. We build our own houses with the same care. Careers, routines, the identities that others see when they look at us. We arrange the furniture of our convictions just so. And then we lock the door against the wind. But the wind has a name. His name was Shams of Tabriz, a wanderer, a wild man, a fury in human form. He did not knock on the door of Jalaluddin's house. He was the earthquake that rendered the foundation dust. Imagine the scene, not as history, but as a feeling in your own chest. The respected scholar, surrounded by his students, the air thick with the incense of certainty. And then, this stranger, ragged, perhaps, eyes that held no respect for the furniture of the mind. He didn't debate theology. He didn't compliment the architecture of Jalaluddin's learning. He looked at the man, past the man, through the man, and he asked a single, devastating question. A question that was less a query and more a key, inserted into the lock of a soul, turning. We don't know the exact question. Perhaps it was, "Who are you truly, when no one is calling your name?" Or, "What is the use of knowing the map of God, if you have never felt the heat of his desert sun?" It doesn't matter. The effect was the same. It was the question that unasks all other questions. And in that moment, the house of a lifetime crumbled, not with a roar, but with the silent, interior shattering of every stained glass window of belief. The respected preacher saw, in the mirror of this wild man's gaze, that he was a tenant in a house that was not his home, that all his knowledge was a story he'd been telling himself about the fire, while standing safely in the cold. This is the part we shy away from. We want the gentle poet, the comforting words about love. We don't want the fury. We don't want Shams. We don't want the one who comes to burn our house down. Because what is a man without his house? What is he but exposed, homeless, a fool in the marketplace of his former life? Yet, this is the first and most necessary mercy. The truth, when it finally comes for you, does not always arrive as a gentle teacher. Sometimes it arrives as a fury. It is the diagnosis that shatters your future, the betrayal that unravels your trust, the failure that humiliates your competence, the sudden silent cry in the middle of a successful, prosperous life that says, "Is this all there is?" It is the shams in your own story, the wild, unwanted guest who dismantles your carefully constructed world. We curse these moments. We see them as disasters. We fight them. We weep. We try to rebuild the house exactly as it was, boarding up the broken windows. But what if? What if this fury is not your ruin, but your release? What if the crumbling of the person you thought you were is not the end of your story, but the first honest sentence? Rumi did not become Rumi by staying in his scholar's house. He became Rumi when he let it burn. He embraced the wild man. He turned his back on his public dignity to sit at the feet of this maddening, glorious mirror. He allowed himself to be unmade, and in that scorched earth of the self, the first green shoot of something real, something that could not be contained by walls or words, began to push its way toward the sun. So tonight, as you lie here in the quiet, consider the furies you have barred from your door, the questions you refuse to ask, the ache you dismiss as indigestion of the soul. What if that very disruption, that crack in your foundation, is not a flaw to be repaired, but an invitation to step out of the house of who you think you are, and into the vast, star-dusted wilderness of who you might truly be? The truth, it seems, would rather see you naked and true in the storm than safe and sleeping in a beautiful lie. But before we leave this broken house behind, Let's linger for a moment in the emptiness that follows the storm. Let's consider the quiet, bewildering landscape that appears when the fury has done its work, and all that remains is you. A different kind of question begins to form there, in the fresh, cool air of a self that has been stripped bare. Chapter 26. Who tends the garden of your ruins? After the fire, after the quake, there is only the quiet. The dust settles. The rubble of your former life lies around you, a shattered belief here, a scorched ambition there. The initial shock has passed, and now you are just left with the field of ruins. This is the most dangerous moment. This is the hour of the ghosts. For Rumi, the fury named Shams did not stay. He vanished. As abruptly as he arrived, he was gone, and in his absence, he left a hole in the universe. Rumi was not just a man who had lost a friend. He was a soul that had lost its center of gravity. He wandered through the ruins of his old life, but now they were just ruins, not a liberation. He was raw, exposed, aching with a longing so profound it became his new identity. He was the one who was missing Shams. He didn't write beautiful, polished poems of cosmic love in those early days. He wrote frantic, desperate, raw odes of grief. He was a man howling in an empty marketplace. He was tending the ruins, not as a gardener, but as a gravekeeper. He was watering the ashes with his tears, hoping for a ghost to rise from them. This is the work so few speak of. The demolition is swift, a divine lightning strike. But the reconstruction is a slow, patient, often bewildering labor. And the first thing you must decide is, who will tend this garden of your ruins? Will it be the ghost of your old self, haunting the places it used to live, weeping for what was lost? Or will it be someone, something new? Rumi, in his desperation, made a breathtaking choice. He did not try to summon Shams back. He did not try to rebuild the scholar's house. Instead, he began to see that the longing itself was the presence. The ache was the connection. He started to find Shams not in a person, but in the beat of the hammer at the blacksmith's forge, in the rhythm of the water turning the mill, in the silence between two thoughts. He began to tend his ruins, not as a memorial, but as a seedbed. He turned his grief into a love song, not for a man, but for the infinite. His poetry became the tending. His whirling became the tending. His very breath became the act of planting something new in the scorched earth. He realized that the beloved he sought in Shams was not a person who could come and go, but a quality of reality that was always, eternally present. The ruins were not a place of death, but the only place where this new, wild, uncultivated growth could possibly take root. We all have our ruins. The career that ended too soon, the relationship that shattered, the dream that dissolved in the morning light. And we stand there, in that familiar desolation, and we are faced with the same choice. Do we hire an architect to rebuild the old house, hoping to keep the wind out this time? Or do we finally accept that the house was the problem, and instead pick up a simple tool, a trowel, a pen, a paintbrush, a kind word to a stranger, and begin to garden? Who tends the garden of your ruins? Is it the ghost of your past, whispering of failure and loss? Or is it the quiet, watchful, patient part of you that knows how to wait in the dark soil for a seed to split its shell? This part does not rush. It does not mourn the empty field. It feels the sun, accepts the rain, and trusts, with a bone-deep trust, that the potential for life is inherent in the very fact of the ground. The ruin is not the end of the story. It is the only place where a true garden can ever begin. And as we sit in this quiet, growing garden, a final question arises from the soil itself. a question about the nature of the one who is left to do the tending. When all the roles have fallen away, and the garden is still young, who or what remains? Chapter 27. Is the love you seek the same love that seeks you? We spend our lives in pursuit. It is the engine of our days. We pursue success, security, love, meaning, God. We are the hunters, and the world is full of prey. We set our traps. We track our quarry. We measure our worth by the trophies we bring back to the silent lodge of our own hearts. Even our spirituality can become this, a pursuit of enlightenment, a chase after a God who seems always to be just over the next ridge, hiding in the mist. Rumi, after his ruin, after he began to tend his garden, stumbled upon a secret that turns this entire exhausting pursuit on its head. It is a secret hidden in plain sight, in the very structure of longing. Listen to the sound of your own wanting the next time it arises, the ache for connection, the thirst for peace, the hunger for a sign, a purpose, a feeling of being met. We assume this longing is ours, our desire, our arrow, shot from the bow of our own incompleteness, aimed at a target we hope is out there. But what if you have it backwards? What if the longing is not your arrow, but the hook of the beloved in your heart? What if the love you seek is, in fact, the very same force that is seeking you? This is the great inversion at the heart of Rumi's world. He stopped chasing God and realized God was the chase itself. The ache in his chest for shams was not his own lonely heart crying out. It was the voice of the beloved, calling to itself from within him. The love he felt was the beloved's love, flowing in both directions at once. The hunter discovered he was also the hunted, and that the entire chase was a single, beautiful, divine circuit. Think of a reed, torn from its bed by the river. It is made into a flute, and then it sings this beautiful, mournful song of separation, of longing for its home by the water. We hear the song and we feel its sadness. But who is the breath in the flute? The flute believes it is making its own song of loss. But the song is only possible because of the breath of the musician, who holds the flute to his own lips. The longing is the musician's. The song is the musician's. The flute is simply the place where the silence is broken into beauty. You are that flute. Your longing for peace, for meaning, for love. That is not your small self's invention. That is the breath of the infinite, moving through you. It feels like a hunger because you are not the source of the food. It feels like a thirst because you are not the well. Your restlessness is not a problem to be solved. It is evidence of the divine breath in your lungs. It is the proof that you are being played upon by a love so vast it has chosen you, this specific, singular combination of notes, as its instrument. So tonight, as you feel the familiar weight of your own desires, your own quiet searches in the dark, try this. Just for a moment. Stop pursuing. Stop aiming your arrow. Instead, listen to the ache itself. Don't analyze it. Don't try to satisfy it. Just feel its texture, its heat, its vibration, and wonder with a soft curiosity. If this feeling is not your reach for the divine, but the divine's gentle, persistent pull on you, what if you are not the seeker, but the one who is being sought? What if your entire life, with all its joy and its heartbreak, is not a journey to find something, but a journey to allow yourself to be found? The love you seek has already found you. It is the seeking itself. And in this quiet, breathless moment, as the boundary between the hunter and the hunted dissolves, there is nothing left to do but to rest. And in that rest, the music plays itself. Chapter 28. What if the only way to keep a thing is to stop holding it? There's a story they tell about a man who lived 8 centuries ago, a scholar of law, a man of substance and standing, a man, I imagine, not so unlike you or me. He understood the weight of ledgers, the solidity of a well-stocked library, the comfort of a reputation built brick by brick over years. His name was Jalāl, and he walked through the world with the certainty of a man who knew what he had, and knew how to keep it. And then he met Shams of Tabriz, a wanderer, a wild man with fire in his eyes and a manner of speaking that felt less like conversation and more like a demolition, a man who owned nothing, and in owning nothing, seemed to possess everything. The story goes that they met, and the scholar and the wild man locked the door and sat together for 40 days and 40 nights. No one knows what was said. No one knows what was shattered and what was born in that sealed room. But when the door opened, the scholar was gone. In his place was Rumi, and everything he had once clutched so tightly, his position, his certainties, his very identity, was now just dust motes dancing in a sunbeam. He had lost it all, and in that losing, he found a voice that would echo for 1,000 years. So the question isn't just an old poetic riddle. It's the quiet, terrifying arithmetic of the soul. What if the only way to keep a thing is to stop holding it? We spend our lives in a state of gentle, persistent clenching. We hold on to our memories, pressing them like flowers in a book, afraid they will lose their color. We hold on to our roles, the provider, the rock, the one who has it figured out. We hold on to our hurts, polishing them like stones in our pocket, their familiar edges a strange kind of comfort. We hold on to love, believing that to love is to possess, to secure, to keep safe from the ravages of time. Our hands are never truly open. They are either making a fist to fight, or a cup to receive, or a cage to contain. But a fist cannot feel the breeze. A cup, once full, cannot accept more. And a cage defines itself by the prisoner it keeps. Imagine, for a moment, the sheer physics of it. You are holding a handful of sand from a riverbank. You close your fingers. You make a tight, secure grip. You have it. It is yours. But then you look, and you see the grains trickling out through the cracks between your fingers. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away, until all you are left with is the grit of what was, and an empty, aching palm. Now, open your hand. Lay it flat. Let the sand rest there, exposed to the sun and the air. The wind may take a grain or two, yes, but most of it stays. It is there, but you are not crushing it. You are not possessing it. You are hosting it. You are in relationship with it. This is the first, quiet rebellion, to unclench. Rumi, after Shams, did not try to hold onto that ecstatic friendship. In fact, Shams vanished as suddenly as he had appeared. Some say he was murdered, driven away by Rumi's jealous students. The loss was catastrophic. A hole torn in the universe. The old Jalāl would have raged, would have mounted a search, would have clung to the ghost of his friend with the desperation of a drowning man. But Rumi began to dance, a slow, turning dance. He didn't clutch at the absence. He invited it in. He stopped holding Shams, and in doing so, he found that Shams was everywhere. In the sunlight on the cobblestones, in the sound of the hammer at the forge, in the silence between two heartbeats. He didn't lose his beloved. He dissolved the container, and the beloved became the ocean. What is it you are holding onto so tightly tonight? Is it an idea of who you were supposed to be by now? A ghost of a chance you didn't take? A word you didn't say? Is it the fragile, beautiful, and terrifying love for your children, which feels like trying to carry a perfect, trembling bubble across a stormy field? The instinct is to tighten your grip, to build a fortress, to control the weather, But what if the fortress is the prison? What if the grip is the cause of the pain? There is a different kind of strength. It's not the strength of the wall, but the strength of the open field. It's the courage to be vulnerable, to say, I do not know how this ends, to love without a guarantee of return, to offer your work to the world without the demand for a specific reward, to release the person you thought you were, and to welcome, with a curious heart, the person you are becoming. It feels like falling. It feels like surrender. And in a way, it is. You are surrendering the illusion of control for the reality of connection. You are trading the portrait, meticulously painted and framed, for the living, breathing, unpredictable landscape. The portrait is safe. It is known. But it does not grow. It does not change. It does not love you back. So just breathe into that space. That small, quiet space between your thoughts, where you are not holding on to anything, where you are not a title, or a resume, or a list of accomplishments or failures. You are just a presence, a witness, the open hand, not the clenched fist, the dance, not the map. And in that release, a strange thing happens. Nothing is lost. Everything is liberated. The love you thought you might lose by not clutching it, it becomes vaster, more spacious. It becomes a climate you live in, not a treasure you guard. The peace you've been chasing by trying to arrange the world just so, it settles upon you like a gentle mist. Not because you've solved all the problems, but because you've stopped fighting the unfightable current of life itself. You haven't lost your anchor. You've discovered that you were never a ship. You are the ocean. But this emptying of the house, it leaves a peculiar silence in its wake, a silence that is not merely an absence of noise, but a presence all its own. It makes you wonder, as the last of your certainties drift out the door like evening moths. Chapter 29. Who is the guest that only arrives when the house is empty? There is a peculiar silence that follows a great letting go. It's not the silence of absence, not merely the void left after the furniture has been cleared out and the echoes have settled. No, this is a different quality of quiet altogether. It is a fertile silence, a listening silence. It's the silence in the concert hall after the last note of a symphony has faded, but before the applause begins. It hangs in the air, pregnant with meaning. And into this silence, Rumi whispers a question that feels almost like a secret passed from one soul to another in the dark. Who is the guest that only arrives when the house is empty? Think of your own mind as that house. For most of our days, it is a bustling, noisy place. The front door is constantly swinging. Thoughts march through like a committee with urgent business, worries about tomorrow, replays of yesterday, lists of things to be managed and maintained. Emotions are the loud family in the kitchen, laughing, arguing, slamming cupboards. Your identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are, is the owner of the house, pacing the halls, arranging the furniture, deciding what is valuable and what is clutter. It is a full house, a busy house, and because of the noise and the constant comings and goings, you never really notice the one who is missing, the intended guest. Now imagine, through some great surrender, some profound exhaustion, the noise stops. The committee of thoughts adjourns, not forever, but for a moment. The family of emotions grows quiet, spent. The owner of the house, that busy, anxious, curating self, finally sits down in a chair in the corner and falls into a deep, dreamless sleep. The house is empty, not of its structure, but of its chaos. The rooms are clear. The air is still, and it is only then that you hear it, a soft, almost imperceptible knock at the door. This is not a guest you can invite with a formal invitation. You cannot send a request. This guest does not respond to demand or schedule. In fact, the more you strive, the more you prepare the house for this arrival, the further away it seems, because your preparation is just another form of noise. Your striving is the owner of the house, now dressed in his best suit, waiting nervously by the door, which is itself a barrier. The guest only comes when the owner is asleep, when there is no one to greet him, no one to perform for, no one to judge the quality of the visit. So who is this guest? Some might call it God, the divine, the beloved, the universe. But those are just names, and names are clothes we put on things that are essentially naked. Rumi called it the friend. But perhaps it is even more intimate than that. Perhaps it is your own deepest, most essential self, the you that existed before you had a name, before the world told you who you were supposed to be. The consciousness that is simply aware, prior to all thought and story. It is the part of you that has been watching the entire play of your life from a seat in the back of the theater. Quiet, unmoving, utterly at peace. It is the witness, the silent knower, and it cannot make itself known while the stage is crowded with actors, and the lights are blazing, and the script is being frantically followed. It emerges in the interval, in the hushed darkness between scenes. This is why our moments of greatest loss, our times of brokenness, our dark nights of the soul, are so often described later as turning points. Not because the pain was good, but because the pain was so total, so exhausting, that it finally forced the owner of the house to collapse. It burned away the furniture of our certainty, and in that scorched and empty space, we met something we had never truly met before. A presence. A comfort that does not comfort in the way of warm blankets and soothing words, but in the way of a vast, star-filled sky, indifferent to your small drama, yet profoundly affirming that you are a part of its magnificent, cold and beautiful whole. Oh, tonight, don't try to invite the guest. That is the work of the owner, and the owner needs to rest. Just notice the emptiness, the space between your breaths, the quiet at the end of a thought, before the next one begins. Don't fear the hollows in your spirit, the places where you feel you have nothing left to offer. That hollow is not a deficiency. It is the sacred space you have been carving out your entire life, without even knowing it. It is the room that is being readied. Simply be the empty house. Be the silent hallway. Be the open door. And listen, not for a sound, but for the quality of the silence that remains when you stop making noise. Who, or what, has been here all along? And as you rest in that recognition, as the boundary between the listener and the listened to begins to softly dissolve, another question naturally, gently, arises from the stillness itself. Chapter 30. What sound does the universe make when listening to itself? We have wandered far from the bustling house of the self, into the quiet fields of emptiness. We have found a guest who was never truly away. But now, let us take one step further. A step so final it requires no movement at all. A step inward, into the very heart of perception. What sound does the universe make when listening to itself? It seems like a philosopher's riddle, the kind of thing you might ponder for a moment, before dismissing with a smile. But stay with it. Let it unravel in the dark behind your eyes. We are so accustomed to being the center of our own perception. I see the moon. I hear the wind. I feel the coolness of the sheets. The I is the constant reference point, the silent observer in the cathedral of the senses. But what if that is the fundamental illusion? What if the I is not the witness, but merely a part of the performance? Rumi, in his endless dance, was not a man turning for God. He had become the turning of God. The separation had burned away. He wrote, "I am not the reed flute, nor the music that comes from it. I am the emptiness inside the flute. The flute is nothing without the hollow space. The music is nothing without the breath. But the emptiness and the breath are one event, one sacred phenomenon. So, what is happening when you listen? Truly listen, not to a specific sound, but to the field of hearing itself. You hear the faint hum of a distant appliance, the sigh of the wind, the rustle of your own body. Where are these sounds? Are they out there, or are they appearing in here, in the vast, spacious awareness that you are? The sound of the wind is not the wind itself. It is the vibration of your eardrum, the electrical signal in your brain, all interpreted within the silent theater of your consciousness. The universe, this vast, interconnected cosmos of spinning galaxies and quantum fields, has grown a nervous system. It has evolved ears. In you, through you, it is hearing itself. The hum of the appliance, that is the universe, humming. The wind sighing, that is the universe, sighing. The slow, steady rhythm of your heart, that is the universe, beating. You are not a person hearing the universe. You are the universe, hearing itself. And what sound does it make? It makes the sound of a reed flute. It makes the sound of rain on a dry roof. It makes the sound of a single, human breath in the dark. It makes the sound of silence, which is not the absence of sound, but the fullness of all potential sound. The canvas upon which all music is painted. This is where the path of the seeker ends, not in an answer, but in a breathtaking collapse of the question. The one who was asking, "What is the sound?" dissolves into the sound. The listener becomes the listening. The man praying realizes he is the prayer. The lover discovers he is the love. There is no more Rumi. There is no more you. There is only the turning, the breathing, the listening. So tonight, as you lie here in the soft darkness, do not try to hear anything special. Do not strain for a cosmic note. Just rest as the capacity for hearing. Let the sounds of the night come and go. The creak of the house, the distant whisper of a car, the faint pulse in your own ears. Don't label them. Don't own them. Don't say, "I hear that." Simply let them be. Let them arise and pass away in this vast, open awareness that you are. And in that simple, effortless allowing, you will realize it. You are the sound and the silence. You are the question and the answer. You are the empty flute and the breath that fills it. The night and the one who is dreaming it. The universe, listening, endlessly, lovingly, to its own perfect, whispered name. If this story left something unspoken inside you, follow that feeling. It'll lead you back here, where every truth waits to be dreamt again.